Good evening. It is Monday, February 7th at 5:15. The City Council meeting and budget work session is now underway. And would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And we are all in attendance. The first and only thing on tonight's agenda is the fiscal year 23 budget work session. And we will begin with that right away. And for those of you, I think there's most of you or a lot of you are here to hear more about the rec center and so on. But we do have a few items of business regarding the budget itself to tend to first, and we'll try and go through that as quickly as possible. Mike?
Thank you, Mayor and Council and those in attendance. So this is kind of our fifth full workshop on the budget this year, and we also had a discussion at one of the City Council meetings. Based on those discussions, there's a few items that I have discussed with some of you individually that you wanted further discussion on this evening. So just to make the discussion easier this evening, I've kind of summarized them on a sheet here. And what I would propose, these are just in order of how they appear as an expenditure in our budget by account number. So that's the order they're in. And would just start at the top. The first is an item on housing implementation work. This was included in the the housing portion of the budget for $56,000 to complete work on developing a housing implementation strategy. I guess I would pause for discussion on that.
Yeah, I think probably the wisest thing to do is just go these line item by line item and get everybody's views on them so we have a better understanding that when they go vote on the budget, what would be included and not included in the budget. These are items, as Mike explained, these are items that just came up to the surface during the budget workshops and were called into question whether or not it's a truly necessary expenditure or not. The budget, the preliminary budget that was presented to us over a month ago now included a levy hike, and our taxable valuation actually went down due to the rollback. And the effect that this has is a very slight tax decrease for the residential property taxpayer, but a 4.24% increase for the commercial property taxpayer. I, as your mayor in my very first budget, wanted to have further discussion before that is what we put, forward as the budget and to our property taxpayers. And so all of the council members are aware of my earlier questions to this, and I think they have some questions about it too, but we will just go down. I think we'll just probably start with whoever wants to volunteer, and we'll start with the housing implementation, which is a $56,000 expenditure from the general fund. Does anybody care to start? Don't all jump at once.
I'll start on this.
Go ahead, Kyle.
So I'm the one that raised the question on the $56,000 housing implementation strategy, which came out of a meeting that some of us were not included on. So, and I understand the value of putting it in there. But before we would make a decision on that, I'd want to see the same thing that some of the others seen. To why we're spending $56,000, and I'm 100% for getting housing going and getting something out there, because there definitely has to be something out there.
Yeah.
So
May I ask Kyle a question? I'm not sure what meeting are you alluding to that people weren't included on?
So there was a meeting in December, and
Okay.
in all fairness,
I'm trying to remember.
Yep.
Yeah.
So this was a meeting that had some different community stakeholders in it. There was two council members, actually a council member and a council member elect because it was in December. The mayor elect was part of that meeting. And, I think going into it, there was some understanding that we were going to hear from a potential developer looking to come to Carroll. In reality, it was a discussion by McClure Engineering that had some success in doing a work with communities on how do you implement and develop housing in your community. Different than what we've done in the past, where it's more of identifying kind of what the problem is, because we know what the problem is. We know that there are 6 houses as of last week on the market in Carroll, and there's a real need of housing because our employers, they're hiring people, they just can't get them, and they can't get the deal closed because they can't find housing. And so it's how do we develop incentives to encourage our local developers to work on housing, and if that isn't succeeding, how can we attract outside developers and frankly builders is probably more what we need to grow the housing. And so all this is a placeholder. We would have to return back with the city council on developing an RFP, on soliciting proposals to do such work. So there's a lot of work that have to be done before we'd expend any of the funding.
And Mike, did you research to get an idea of the cost? Like 56, is that like the high end or kind of the median area?
That's probably maybe a higher end of what we would expect to
So
expend.
it could be done for less. There's definitely a need. The reason I asked, we've had so many housing meetings. We had the housing study. You did the PowerPoint, you invited, we've had a lot of different meetings with a mix of people. And it just seems to me, we've implemented some good strategies to incentivize, but we're not getting to where we want to go with the housing. So I think coming up with some type of long-term strategy where we could implement something incrementally, but we need advice. Knowledge is power, and the better we're educated, we'll make more informed decisions. So I'm with Kyle on that. We need to do something.
I might have misunderstood. Did you want it included in the budget?
I'm for doing something, but I don't want to see $56,000 spent and then nothing happen out of this. And I think we all know that something has to happen with housing.
That's why it's considered a place marker. I mean, we don't know what it will cost, so we put it in there and we hope that it's less than that. I mean, clearly Mike just said
I
it
understand.
was-
I just don't want to see $56,000 spend and we spin our wheels and not get anywhere like what's been done prior on some things.
Well, we're really not spending it at this
Yeah.
point. We're just wanting to know if we want to put it into the
budget.
tax rate.
Right.
Yeah, the RFQs
That's
will,
all, that's what really all you're after here, Kyle.
that seemed a little high.
Yeah, I mean, it's been in our strategic planning meeting for the last how many years, and our goal has always been to tell Mike that we need to go further with it. And he heard from the gal that led our meeting this last year that we need to get moving on it. We haven't done anything with it. We have studied and studied and studied and read the study and reread the study, and now we need to do something. So this is our shot at doing something. Get some advice.
And if the RFQs come in and the prices are too high, then we can just say, halt, we'll try something else. We'll be pragmatic about it.
I would, and if I could add, I would also say we got to find the right approach. And so before we even engage into a contract with someone, we're going to have to put together an RFP of what we're looking for out of it. And then we're going to have to get comfortable with a consultant that would help guide us from it. But my belief is, we need that professional help to help guide us. It's one of the things about Carroll is we are lean staffed. Well, because we are lean staff compared to a lot of our peers, we do seek a lot of professional guidance in different areas.
As we move forward with these, it probably should have explained earlier that this is among about, I think, 6 different initiatives that were included in the budget. There's going to be, well, one more in here that wasn't included in the budget we still need to discuss. But, my interest in bringing these back up to question was we could cut this tax increase relatively in half by their removal from the budget and without unnecessarily taxing the residents. And so if what I'm hearing is if anybody else wants to chime in, but what I'm hearing is to include it in the budget. Is that what I'm hearing?
I think we need to do something or nothing's going to happen.
Okay, we'll move on to the next one then, unless there's any further said on that. The next one is a comprehensive plan. Mike, you can talk to this a little bit more specifically. The last update was done when?
2013.
Okay, so it's nearing 10 years old. By fiscal year, it will be 10 years old. Go ahead.
So in basics, what a comprehensive plan is it's the legal document on land use, and it's required by state code that we have a comprehensive plan if we're going to have zoning. Certainly, there's no requirement on frequency of updating the comprehensive plan, but it guides a community's growth and development, looks at everything from infrastructure to economic conditions in a community, employment opportunities in a community, and tries to set out a vision for how a community grows into the future. This was an item that was included in the council's strategic plan this year as an item that was raised and asked for by an elected official. I do know that this received 5 votes for support during that process. And so really just guidance on if this is a priority to continue in fiscal year 2023. And just to note, the 35,000 was what we talked to Region 12, and that would be their cost to update the plan.
Yeah. And back to that strategic planning, I hate to just dig that back up again, but remember that may not be reflective of this current council. Some votes were cast, by exiting members, and there were 2 members of the new council that were not there. So I just raised the question: when was the last comprehensive plan done prior to 2013? Does anybody know? Is that?
I look at Randy, not to put him on the spot. But
1999. 99. So it was 14 years old.
Yep.
Point made that, is it necessary to do it every 10 years or not? It's 35 grand is the estimate.
Does anything change?
Well, the landscape certainly has, but land use and things like that, yes. We know what they are. We've identified what they are. But yeah, there's certainly going to find some changes in it. Look at Carroll, 2013 to 2022 today. It's certainly changed.
Did this have somewhat to do with the retail coach coming in or the walk that you guys did up and down? None of that.
Mm-mm.
I'm just trying to remember why this was brought, why we talked about this. Gosh, we talk about it so much.
Whenever a comprehensive plan is developed, you're thinking long-term about land use and how you want development to play out. And so you control, it takes a vision for what you want to do with the land. And I was thinking that, I can never remember his name, the guy that we annexed. Kothi, yeah. And so, it has a lot to do with zoning of the land. And Mike knows way more about it than me. I was on the committee, and the committee included, it was a large group, lots of community members. There were real estate people. They were really good. And so You get a lot of perspectives, and Chris did a great job of gathering data that would take any of us tons of time to find. So, it's something we could get on.
I was part of it too. I was
Were
on the
you
Board of
on that?
Supervisors then, and
Yeah.
I remember
Do you remember
getting it,
things?
and leafing through it and contributing to it. And then I remember it sit on a shelf, but that's just my memory of it. I'm sure it gets addressed at times, but
Are you, Mark, we did about the same time, we did do a strategic plan.
right, it's
which
something
is
entirely different,
It's
right,
entirely different,
Right.
yes.
as part of
And
that too,
did end up
right.
in dust.
Yeah, I'm with you. Comments furthermore? Thank you, Carolyn. Is there any real issues of removing it?
We can delay it.
Very good.
If you pull up my computer, Mayor Wright. So what I have displayed, well, it'll show up here on the council dais here shortly. So this will be, we're going to track the changes in real time, and then you can see in the orange, we can see the top is the blue is the current preliminary budget was presented by staff to council. The green then shows what the changes would reflect on any change we make. And now the orange would show you what the proposed budget would be with the changes as we go flow through them. So,
Okay. So for example, just that one item removed
correct.
would take it to 367, the levy. Or no, 367 percentage, I'm sorry, it reduces at 367. Levy would be
Yes.
still just over $12. Okay, I'm with you now.
Correct. So
Yep,
yeah,
sorry.
This is the levy.
Yep.
Lowers it
That's the
basically
reduction.
6 cents.
Yep.
So it's 1207.
Yep, I'm with you. Yep, I'm with
So,
you.
just so we can track and everyone's in
No,
agreement as we
very
work through
helpful.
this.
So you have to understand, when you reduce the commercial, you reduce the residential also
Correct.
at the same time.
Yeah, you can't do one without the other.
Right.
Yeah,
And for the public's benefit,
levy's a levy.
there's differences between the commercial and residential. That's all based on state formulas. We don't go say we're going to raise commercial more than residential. It's just the way the formulas that we get dealt with from the state of Iowa. Last year, commercial actually was pretty much zero and residential went up 3.5%. So it's all those state driven formulas and the rollback that
Yes,
make the
sure,
difference
rollback.
there.
Very good. Classification and compensation study.
So this is an item as we go into union negotiations, which we'll do this next fall and next winter. We would work with a consultant to really go through the citywide, work through job descriptions, try to align various positions together within the organizations so that we can get some parity between like positions and pay and duties and responsibilities. And then once that work is done, you go out into both peers in the public sector throughout the state of Iowa, and then within the community, work with private sector to really figure out wages for employees. Are we competitive? Are we not competitive? And we know in some areas we are running into big issues with pay and ability to attract any talent to various positions within the city. We know that they're seeing statewide union negotiations that are happening, especially within the law enforcement area around the state. We're seeing wages in some cases double digits. We've seen that locally, but within the cities, even though the blue was a county issue, it's trickling into the cities statewide. But especially in our wastewater and water departments, that challenging to hire and recruit. And so this work enables us to go into union negotiations better prepared. The 60,000, we reached out to a couple of cities that have done some of these studies recently, and this is probably the high end. We heard numbers anywhere from $30,000 to $60,000 for that work to be done. I guess I'd be happy to answer any questions about it.
Comments or thoughts? $60,000?
Well, Mike, with this whole thing going on, your comparison to city levies and every other comparison, there's 14 other cities. What Brad makes and everybody else is public knowledge. We can look that up on the internet, right?
Well, no,
Is that private or not?
Public record.
it's public
Public
record. We
record.
can request it, but it's more than just looking it up on the internet. Yes.
So is that who we're getting our peer studies from, is what you're talking about, that are higher or not? Are they coming from Pella? Are they coming from Spencer, Storm Lake, Oskaloosa, Grinnell?
So that's part of it. We also work with private sector employers, or we want to. And that's one of the things, working with a private consultant versus city receiving the data. Private sector doesn't want to just release their data. A lot of times when they're doing these surveys, as long as they're guaranteed they'll remain confidential, they're more apt to participate in that, versus when Mike calls up and asks for the data, that can be then public data at that point. And so that's one of the advantages of working with a private consultant and gathering this information.
That's a lot of money.
Understand?
You're going to say this is going to help with the negotiations next year?
That was the purpose. I mean, the council, I know prior council had talked about including that in this year's budget, in part because of union negotiations next year.
See, what I worry about that is this is the last year for our 4-year or our lock-in with everybody, with the police.
Correct.
And so next year we will have all these negotiations coming due, just so you have that in your mind. And it won't be, it'll be tough to stay where we're at.
Oh, yeah, that'll be
So
fun.
we'll have that as a big increase in our budget, because, payroll for city employees in the general fund is 70% of the general fund budget. So you got to be careful what you're doing.
My thoughts were, particularly when you're doing with the represented entities, is, you negotiate the best that you can, regardless of any type of compensation study, and they're all going to do comparables anyways. And when you go into arbitration, then it ends up being a judgment. And again, it pretty well tosses out any kind of study or, cost of that study. And you're pretty well, you're definitely, responsible for what the arbiter decides. I did the union negotiations at the county again, and I did them for all 4 represented units. And so I know what it entails, and all of the data out there is useful, but is it necessary when it comes down to an arbiter? So, and I realize we're talking more than just represented units too, but, I think at least my humble opinion would be, if, we give a union, certain compensation, we should spread that through the rest of the staff. If they get X%, I think the rest of the staff should get X%, similar to what we did this year. We just pretty well followed, what is in the last year of the 2 represented unions. So, thoughts? I shared mine. $60,000.
And if this isn't till next fall, there's going to be a lot of things that change from now till then. And I understand, it helped get some things ready. But to Mark's point, when a union comes in, they're going to pretty much tell you what you're going up. I mean, you have some negotiation, but paperwork that's a year and a half old.
Now, the arbitrator will. The union would make their request, but they're not going to tell you what it's going to be. But to your point, yeah, you're subject to the arbiter if it goes to arbitration. It doesn't have to go to arbitration. You prefer that it not go to arbitration.
We've never gone to arbitration as long as I've been on the council.
Yeah.
Like, refresh arbitration, if you get to that point, how it works.
Well, you're testing me a little bit here, but in general principle, I mean, first of all, with the new collective bargaining, there's different paths for both public safety and non-public safety entities. In general, with your non-public safety entities, whatever the last offer is from either the union or the employer, the city in this case, the arbitrator has to pick from one of those.
It's one or the other.
Right.
However, with the non-public safety, you're capped at 3%. So even if the city said, we're going to offer 5%, the union asked for 6%, the arbitrator in that case can only give 3%. That's what the way state law works.
You did good.
Then with the public safety, very similar, there's just no cap.
Thank you.
Yeah. If I can only add one other thing I think is important to keep in mind is we do have, I think the other thing that this looks at, and I tried to express it, is while the union negotiations is also important, this also looks at the various job classifications we have today and ensures that we have good parity of what the market's demanding in various positions. So for example, I'm not trying to pick on any job classification, but our maintenance workers today, they're required to have a CDL, they plow snow, they do construction work during the year. Not comparable to a CDL truck driver privately, but in a lot of cases, a CDL truck driver is getting paid more now than our maintenance worker is. And so really understanding not just should all positions get a 3% increase like this year's budget shows, but also tries to understand where we have various positions and should some positions get a little bit more as we go through this review process than a standard like cost of living, because we are running into issues where we're just not market competitive and we're not able to recruit individuals in those positions that we need to recruit. So it is more than just trying to set up for a kind of percentage across the board. It's also looking at individual classes, job classifications, and trying to understand, are we competitive in the market?
Yeah. Pretty widespread problem.
I want to make,
The compensation, does it include benefits also?
It would be total compensation.
Okay. Laverne, sorry.
yeah, I guess this whole list here, we're going through to try and get to what? What number are we trying to get to?
Well, what I'm hoping for is that we cut the tax increase in half. That's what I'm hoping for. A little over $200,000 worth of items.
So, okay, I see that. You want to go from what, 4.24 on the commercial to 2.24? That's close to half.
I think so, yeah.
Okay, that's a decrease in revenue of $122,560. Laura got me this information.
252.
So that's the number you're searching for, Mark, or is 100?
Yeah, certainly trying to get as close to it as possible.
Okay, so we got a lot of big numbers coming down here that we could look at too.
Absolutely.
So my suggestion is hold on this one. Come back to it if we have to.
Okay.
And see if we can get to your 122,560.
Okay. Mine was the elimination of all of them, was a total.
You want $0?
Well,
That's 193,000.
okay.
That's zero growth in tax asking? Is that what you're?
Is that what you're
going
asking
Mark?
for?
No.
So
You're asking for
0%.
0%?
What I'm hoping for is a reduction of the 4.25 to,
Like,
yeah,
you want that number.
yeah, the 151. Yeah, there it is. Thank you. Yeah, the general fund reduction of 151,000.
151,000.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's 1.78 instead of 4.24%.
Yep.
Okay, so our goal is
Yeah, 1.7.
for you is to, I don't know what the others are in council members, but if we agree we can try to get to that number, then we got something we can search for here. Otherwise we're doing a lot of guessing and we got a lot of information to come ahead of
Yeah,
us.
I'm with you.
Okay, Mark, tell me
That's why this
again
tool is so nice.
how
Go ahead,
much
Carolyn.
off the general fund portion of our levy.
Yeah, 151,000.
151,000. And we're at 4,264,583 right now,
Right.
which is 66% of our tax asking out of the total levy, components of our levy.
Okay.
The total amount is around 6.5. So you want to reduce that by 151.
Correct.
Okay, Laura or Mike, you might have to answer this. Of that 151,000 that we're looking at our target, is that going to include the pay raise for the people next year? Are we going to be able to do the pay raise, because that's locked in, and then minus 151,000 after that?
Well, the budget, the way it is presented today, includes all the wage increases.
Okay,
So if you eliminate individual items and not wages. then
we're good.
yes,
All
it would
right,
be-
I just want to be clear on that. So we're shooting for 151,000.
Correct.
How you guys feel about that? JJ? Okay, I'm okay with that. We'll see how far we can get, but, so that's what I'm saying. Let's just hold off on this one
Okay.
and come back to it
And
if
so
we
the
have
only
to.
reduction we made thus far is 35,000.
Yeah,
So we've got
But we got some numbers coming
120 to
down.
go yet.
Yeah, we got a bunch of numbers
I'm with
coming
you.
here. All right.
Thank you.
Somebody want to keep track?
Moving
Laura,
right
can you
along
keep
at
track?
light speed.
Oh, all right. I can't see
Yeah,
my.
that's
very-
a really handy tool.
Here, I can make it bigger if you need to.
Oh, geez.
Not that big.
Just a second, I'm not that bad.
There we go.
There we go. I only got two things now.
Okay,
This next one wasn't on my list. I think one of the council members had brought this one up, but regarding the library staffing and adding an additional 12 hours of part-time staff, which is $5,000, $5,056 is what it is. But I really don't have a real opinion on it either way. I understand what they're wanting to accomplish. But
Can I speak to that?
absolutely,
That was me.
that's what I want you to.
With the library being as new as it is, I was trying to understand how much labor force is needed for it. So normally when anything comes out brand new, you have a lot of labor built behind it. Or you see a growth in customers, let's put it in a customer base, and then eventually that backs off a little bit. With the data that we've got being brand new, does it justify adding another half a person there? So that was my only question.
Yeah.
Is the data long enough, sustainable enough, that we can just say, okay, let's add 12 more hours to the budget because it seems kind of busy right now.
Yeah, that's understandable. So the Board of Trustees, as we look at our strategic plan, we want to expand programs and services is the main initiative that we're trying to accomplish with this. And we continue to evaluate and discuss the Sunday hours as well. So that's the part of it to help with that. I know,
Rachel, are you gonna follow, is the Sunday hours gonna come up? Are you going to follow through with that? Is that what's planned?
well, so talking with the board again, we're still in discussion about it and still evaluating it. And I think we're still gathering data. We don't want to ask the community if they want Sunday hours if we aren't able to do it, is the main thing. So at this point, we aren't able to do it without.
12 hours is what you're asking to supplement it to be open the Sunday hours.
The 12 hours would cover Monday through Saturday hours. Now we got to evaluate what Sundays would look like. Would we adjust our hours on Saturday to accommodate the Sunday to flex hours out that way? It's all a big puzzle piece. So that still needs to be determined yet. I also have information that was asked about Sunday hours previously from Laverne. And if you're interested in that, I have that here if you would like that. So I can give that out. I'll let you pass that down and then I'll use that one.
And one item of note was the $5,056 was not included in the original 151 sought reduction. It was not included. Any other thoughts on that? Keep-
I'm okay with it.
I do too. I think it gives them flexibility.
Yeah.
So they know that they're not spinning their wheels trying to figure out, well, if we look into new programs and do a survey, but the money isn't there, so it's $5,000, which could be well spent to promote our library.
But you're talking, are you talking labor hours? Or are you talking activities that are costing the 5,000? I'm talking labor hours.
This is labor hours. This
Right.
would include, this is just to cover the personnel.
Okay.
Shall we leave it in or remove it? Any other thoughts? Sounds like we're going to leave it in.
I think it's reasonable.
Okay. Moving on, and there was a question about the mowers that surfaced
Yeah, and
from one of the council members as well.
let me just talk
Mine.
through this a little bit.
I understood them, but
So we include a number of mowers every year. There was 4 mowers that were included in the overall budget proposal, 2 within the Parks Department, 1 in the golf course, and 1 in the cemetery. We replace mowers on an as needed basis, kind of based on hours of use. Staff, based on kind of this comment, we did go back and review. We could hold back on the cemetery mower for 1 fiscal year. We believe that would not be materially an impact to us. So if that's an area that we'd like to reduce, that would be would work.
Mike, can you tell me again? I mean, you said that we do trade them in and how often do we do it? What's the general?
It's based on the hours.
Okay.
I would say hours and shape of the vehicle. Like the one we're replacing right now for parks, it isn't necessarily high on hours, but it has had a lot of damage sustained to it. And that's from people previous to who we have in place now. But yeah, it's a little bit of both.
Usually you try to get around 2,500 hours out of the mowers, 2,500 to 3,000.
Is when
And you
we
have a good
start
trade-in
kind of
value.
budgeting for them.
How many mowers do we have? I mean, in the whole parks. Sorry, I mean, that's just a.
Parks has 5, cemetery has 3, golf course has a lot.
7
Well, depends.
T-mowers.
I mean, you got T mowers, you have fringe mowers, you have got something special for every area.
And that 100-inch
100
one,
inch.
I mean, that would be a new, you don't have anything like that up there right now?
We currently do, and again, it goes back to repair costs. It's there on hours at 2,000 right now, so it's usually a little bit before, but we're still talking a full season before we would get it replaced. Last year we had over $7,000 in repairs to that unit alone, all mechanical things. So just age, wear and tear. That's the reason we're requesting that one to get replaced. Actually, I would say out of the 3 of them, that would be the priority of getting replaced, the top priority.
The one thing you got to worry about equipment is whatever you don't do this year, we got a whole nother set coming at us next year. And then you'll have to probably replace these. Every year, as much stuff as the city has, there's always a list.
And with the exception of the golf course, of course, the golf course has 2 full-time employees, several part-time and seasonal staff. It obviously has way more mowers because of the specialties. For parks, we have 5 total guys. We have 5 total mowers. So once one goes down, we don't have anything to replace it with.
any other thoughts, comments?
So like I indicated, I mean, from staff's perspective, we would support delaying the cemetery one if the council so chooses.
I'm game to put it in the system to get to 151. at 30,000.
Have we had to make any repairs to that one? The
Nope.
cemetery mower?
Nope, it's just kind of on the
It's up
early
in
end, so
hours.
it's more of just asking.
Alright.
Um,
Then I would.
but
be
we
okay
know if
doing
that's one that we have to lose in this budget, we're comfortable with doing that.
it. Okay.
I agree.
I agree with
Okay, very well. Move on to the next golf course issue is the irrigation. Again, this was not one that I brought up per se, but maybe from one of the council members, apparently.
Yeah, and I'll
And
just
the question.
Yeah, I'll just recap. And I think this was more, they wanted more information. Chad may have a photo of this also. So overall, the irrigation system is aging. Overall, the project is estimated right now about $425,000. $175,000 is in pump house repairs, and $250,000 in irrigation head replacement. Now, we've been saving for a number of years, and I highlighted out the different fiscal years. We've actually slowly been setting funds aside. So we have now, with what's in the 2023 fiscal year budget, have set aside the total $425,000 in funding for that work. The plan would be to first undertake the pump house replacement in fall of 2022. And then the irrigations heads would follow after that. I guess if there's any specific questions beyond that, be happy to answer those.
So the actual net general fund effect, after the three prior years savings is how much roughly?
You're roughly 170,000.
So, okay, so it's safe to say $150,000 to $170,000 is calculated into the general fund for fiscal year 23.
Yeah.
Okay.
So essentially you have the pump house funds raised.
Correct.
Yes,
And that's 158,375.
So pretty close.
perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
I really, I didn't raise the question, so I don't have much to comment other than the fact that it's just necessary maintenance and
Have we been spending a lot of money on it? I don't remember.
I guess I don't know the actual figures of what's been spent on the I'll start with the pump house. Taking a look at it, today is the first time I've actually looked at it. I've just kind of gone on the knowledge of Scott. It's in bad shape. If we lose that, we lose the golf course. I mean, that's just how we get water onto our greens, onto our tee boxes, into our fairways. So that is definitely a high priority. As far as the irrigation heads go, that would be an upgrade. They're the same. Most of them are the same heads that were on there when the irrigation project happened. So you're looking at 20 plus years. They've lived basically their full life. Right now we're placing quite a few a year just because of problems with them. And of course, all that repair costs money, and we understand that. So this would just be upgrading those to a better unit.
But that's not in this budget, is it?
it is.
The heads?
Yeah.
You got 24 and
You got-
25 behind it.
But I'm sorry. I thought we had the irrigation in there.
It's listed here as
It
2024 and
is.
25.
It is.
The irrigation heads, it's actually, the funding is set aside in between general fund and local option sales tax and fiscal 23 for both projects. Now, when they actually get completed, will be timing on the
Oh.
golf season.
Okay, correct. That's my,
Yeah,
sorry. I knew we'd figured them in.
Yeah, the funding's there, yes, but we don't, when the construction actually occurs is unknown right now.
That's different.
So if we don't do them, if we don't do it, is the funding going somewhere else? I mean, it's sitting there for that, and if we don't do that, I understand the pump house, but if the heads start to fail, then we're in the same boat as not having a pump house as well. So then we don't have a golf course. So
Yep, and with the irrigation heads themselves, we'd be talking about an individual head that would fail. We'd
Correct.
replace that till we
That
do the
would be
overall
replaceable.
project.
But you're looking at 465 total heads on the golf course.
There's a reason why they call them greens, right, Chad?
That's right.
Got to keep them greens.
Wouldn't know. I never hit them.
Does anybody see any need to remove them necessarily? Okay, we'll leave them in. Thank you. Moving right along. But we are going to remove one mower just ahead of that was what you did.
We did remove that.
Okay, Pleasant Ridge Timberline Sidewalk. This is just for the design study for this year. There's just been a lot of probably confusion and perhaps misunderstanding. Incoming council too, exactly what the study would entail. We're understanding, or at least I'm understanding, I shouldn't speak for anybody else, but that, the timberline portion, the residents want. There hasn't been any pushback on that. You're more familiar with this than I am. No pushback on that whatsoever. I'm sorry, Pleasant Ridge. I do that all the time, Carolyn. Sorry.
And the people who live on the corner of Pleasant Ridge and
Hidden Valley.
Hidden Valley, since they're on the corner, it would involve them on both, on the south and then the west. And they sent us all that email, and they're definitely interested. It's just so congested, and all the trucks. I mean, I see sidewalks as basic infrastructure. And there are some definite safety issues in that whole loop. And I don't know, maybe Kyle has rethought his position, but he suggested that we go even farther west on Timberline. Now, a few homeowners on that one block, they don't want to upset, what they're used to. But then I went on the assessor's office and looked up their property and how much land they have. Two of the three, or three of the five, have over 2 acres. And the smallest lot is like 2/3 of an acre. So I think with maybe once we get the design done and we show them like, okay, you won't lose these trees here or whatever. I understand they want to keep the aesthetics, but I just see there, for me, it's a big safety issue because of all the growth to the west. And I don't know, Kyle, are you still thinking going west, continuing it or just stopping?
Well, the only reason I brought that up between Hidden Valley and Prairie View Drive was that's where a main population is for people that are going around that.
Yes.
If we're not going to do from there to there, I don't feel that it makes any sense to go from Hidden Valley on down along Timberline Road.
Right, and our policies and procedures say it's up to us if we want to, this has become, as you said, because of the growth of Peter Street, and it's become a main artery to get onto Main Street and go into the Central District area and elsewhere. So
I do have a question on the cost or construction cost. Sorry about that. Of 160,000, and I know it's undetermined, but originally this was talked about from the corner where that bend, the sidewalk was put in, trees were taken out, guardrail replaced. Originally, it was from there to the corner, and then it was talked about on Hidden Valley down to Pleasant Ridge Road. So that construction cost is going to go up significantly, I would guess, by adding all that in. Not only that, there's some fiber optic and electrical boxes between Prairie View Drive and Hidden Valley that's going to run into an issue as well.
Are you meaning adding in Pleasant Ridge?
Well,
Or
yeah,
that
this
are
construction
less?
cost didn't have Pleasant Ridge, Hidden Valley in it, if I remember right. This was a timber line.
I thought it was for the entire loop.
Randy?
It was, that cost was for Timberline to Hidden Valley, and then Hidden Valley to Pleasant Ridge, and Pleasant Ridge east to the existing sidewalk. It didn't include the section between Hidden Valley and Prairie Ridge, Prairie View.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Randy, I'm wrong a lot, right? But with the fiber optic and the electrical box in our right of way, those typically would have to be relocated at the cost of the utility. And that would hold true in this case.
It's good to know.
I think the question was raised whether or not, because, and Kyle, the 160 isn't in this budget year. I think you know that, but just to clarify that for everybody, that the only thing that's in this budget is just the design study itself. And I think the question was raised that the design study would include, I'll see if I can do this one more time, Timberline, which has had some opposition. And, would that be this council's vision that we would move ahead with a design study with the further intention or belief that we would move forward and force sidewalks on the Timberline people? Did I say that right?
So my understanding, there was a meeting prior to new council elected with people along Timberline Road.
Yeah, that was, Randy, you headed the meeting. How many years? It was like 3 years
Two,
ago,
3 years.
2 or 3.
September
yeah.
of
It was-
2019.
Yeah, it was quite a while. And so I don't know, until some type of design is worked up to discuss with the residents, because there are just 2 or 3 homes that may object, but we have a whole huge population that lives in that area and that would really feel a lot safer if that sidewalk came into existence. As I said before, if we see the design, maybe they'll see that I have no idea. But remember, sidewalks exist in the city right away. This is not taking their property.
Correct.
So and 2, looking at our lost revenues for 22, 23, we're carrying over into 23, 24, $267,409. So I think the 15,000 would be well spent just to see what we're dealing with if it would move forward, which would be the next year part.
Right,
You're
that's
right
my
about it.
understanding too.
Yeah,
So you're saying pay it for and lost and take it out of general fund?
it's
Oh, it's already on lost, okay.
It's already in lost, yeah. But it was in general fund a while back. You're right, Laverne.
So it wouldn't impact the levy.
No,
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 at all.
not at all.
So I guess I'm wondering, why are we discussing it? If we're,
Well, it was just one of the items that was in question,
oh, all right,
is all. Yeah.
okay. Because it has nothing to do with the bottom line that we're getting at.
Yeah.
All right.
I, for one, just wouldn't have any interest in forcing a sidewalk on people that wouldn't want it. And I understand the public safety issue. I get all of that and serving the community. I just wouldn't want to, force it upon somebody.
No, Mark,
So we,
you would have advocated for us when we built our house. Ours was forced on us. It was okay with us, though. We dealt with that.
I'd have been there had I known.
so this is really a discussion for another time at this point.
Yeah,
Yeah, let's- Let's just table it.
Okay. So it's okay. Corridor Commerce Phase 11. $25,000 of design services is included in the fiscal year 23 budget, which would allow and provide guidance on a estimated $1.5 million in fiscal year 24. But for this purposes, we're just talking about fiscal year 23. But looking forward would it trigger another $1.5 million expenditure on continuing the corridor of commerce?
I'm in favor to delay it even maybe more than 1 year if we have to. Delay it 1 year and then look at it again next year.
Any other?
Delay.
Very good. So
Yeah.
the next item is going to be the rec center improvement project. And is this the time that everybody wants to discuss the rec center?
Do you want
We-
to skip to that bottom one first? I don't feel.
Well, I asked that about Mike, but he just thought that due to flow, we would go ahead and do the rec center thing, but
But if you want to do the media request one, that's certainly, it's maybe the easier of the two.
that's
Sorry,
why,
that's where my mind was.
yeah, it was mine too, but Mike,
I just did them kind of in order of where they're going to come out of the budget.
so we'll just table the rec center. We didn't get your hopes up. We'll get back to the rec center in just a moment. But we have been asked by the Times Herald and Carroll Broadcasting to consider a $48,000 expenditure to help advertise and further a communication initiative. Communication to our constituents is something that I think all of the council share with me, that communication can be improved. We still have a long way to go. My hesitance towards it, I'll state it right away and then let everybody else speak in, was it is it's essentially an advertising campaign is what it is, which may have some benefit. And, we can, talk about that. And it does further a message, makes it more available to us through the Times Herald and also on all 3 radio stations. And then there's a small component that would include the La Presa newspaper, the Hispanic speaking one that serves Carroll. I, for one, have just been more interested in what myself as the ambassador and the CEO of the city of Carroll can do to help further that cause. I've only had 30 days to, try and further that mission. The council, I think, has all agreed that they need to take their fair share of it as well. When it came up the night that Doug and Kim presented it, there's still a little bit of concern as who and how we would manage this, because it would still, over and above the $48,000, would still take staff time. And, would it befall Mike? Would it befall Mike's staff? I can attest Mike's a pretty loaded guy the way he is. But, my belief in this is I'd like to see us walk before we run is the best analogy that I can share. So I'll open it up to the council.
Mark, how about this? You say walk before we run. I see this as the city just building on what you're doing. And I don't see it as ad so much as I don't see what you write as an ad. I see what you write as its comment, giving facts. And the same as the supervisors do, an informational column or article. And maybe I think it would be good to walk before we run and try and experiment and see how it works out. And try a few months. I don't know if that would be amenable. Try a few months, see what we think. We may not always have a whole lot to write about. It may be intermittent. So maybe work out a walk before you run situation and view these more I see it as information, facts-driven, pertinent issues that we believe, and certainly you might collaborate, you believe we should be getting the message out to the community. Maybe try for 3 months maybe, and take a step back, evaluate with everybody, you, Mike, and the media, and just see what we think. How's it going? I'd be in for that.
How would we measure it? I mean, that's fair suggestion, but
I
how
can
would
tell, I
we
can tell you
evaluate
the
it? How would
feedback,
we measure it?
I'm constantly getting negative feedback, false information, just constant. It's way worse now than it's been in my 15 years doing with school board in this. It's just all the time, the wrong information gets out on social media. You go somewhere in public, somebody will tell you, what are you guys doing with, and it's just wrong information. I don't, you probably new in council, you probably haven't had that, but, been around a long, people know who we are, and it's just constant. I mentioned this in our planning session, I get tired of it. All the misinformation out there that you have to tell people, it's just, so I guess what I would like to look at is converting it from general fund to trying it in a lost budget for 3 months. This is your balance that you'll have.
And this was not included in the fiscal
Right,
year
it's
23.
an additional, so that's why I'm
This is
saying,
gonna put it back.
that's why I'm saying,
To the
don't
other
even put it in the general fund, but try it for a period. We can discuss this at a later time, that if it's okay to divert it to loss, and we can talk about it at a later time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not gonna stop the social media though.
I know.
Yeah.
That's the only bad thing is.
I know, that's,
If it was a fix,
I get it.
I'd pay twice that.
Yeah, boy.
But we just don't know, and more importantly, I just want to know how to measure it.
I get,
And
I go to the rec center quite a bit, and it's multiple times at the rec center, not just once a night. Sometimes it's half a dozen different people. And then sometimes you go along and there's nothing, but it depends on what's going on. But you go to an event, man, and it's all wrong information. That's what gets me. And it just doesn't stop.
I don't know, how do you measure what you're doing? Do you get feedback, Mark?
yeah, just
How's
pretty
it
much
going?
return on investment. When you're going to do a marketing campaign, Doug can attest to this too. You set up, trigger mechanisms in there to measure results. Kyle, I think you can add to this too. And like Facebook, it provides metrics on the backside, how many people are clicking, how many people are sharing, how many people, whereas with traditional media, it's a little bit more challenging because, they've got circulation and then maybe Nielsen data or something like that, how many people are listening or how many people are subscribing, but how many people are, unless you're cutting out a coupon, and they're bringing it in for their oil change or whatever, you really don't have much way to measure it other than, somebody might just offer, hey, I heard your ad on the radio, or I saw your ad in the paper. Where's my deal? But without that, it's just not as measurable. And,
To move tonight along.
Yep. Thank you.
Are we okay with just talking about it at a different time and using lost funds, or do you want to use general fund money? I'm for pushing it, talk at a later time.
Well, we got
And
two
keep the
proponents for it.
That doesn't mean we're going to do it. That means
I
we're just
understand
not
that.
going to worry
Just
about it
include
in
it
the
in the
budget
budget.
tonight.
Right. Thoughts?
I'm for pushing it on to get things moving as well, but it was raised at a prior meeting that there's still one local news media that's left out of it. I feel like if we're doing this for a city, but to buy local, shop local, if we're supporting 3, we need to support all 4. With the Smart Shopper, La Prensa, Radio, and the Times Herald. That's my feelings.
To ask a question, what really brought this on? So I think if I look back, The beginning part was the city was gonna hire a full-time person to take care of all media projects and everything else. So is that in place or?
No,
No.
at our planning session, actually, I brought it up just like
Okay.
I did now because it was frustrating to me.
Right.
And Mike had mentioned maybe we should look at hiring media specialists, and then it never went any farther than that.
So it became a suggestion which got taken to us now to
Right. Is that correct?
hire somebody to report the news, basically.
Well, to bring out the correct information.
Right.
You know, the paper will do it once. Well, we might decide to do it 2 or 3 times to make sure the impact is there.
Okay.
You know, I guess what I'm after is, do we just defer it and talk about it later, or
I would defer it and talk about it later. First of all, it's not in the budget for what we were looking at right now.
Right.
So if
But we
anything, we
could
look
add
at
it
it
to
for
the
next year. Correct. So I say we wait and talk about it later.
Answer your question, no, I mean, do we?
I mean, right
do
now
we
it's.
include it in the budget book then? It still has to be included. I understand it's not going to affect the general, by your plan, wouldn't affect the levy rate, but
So, I mean, a couple thoughts here, because I know, so this was not included in the proposed budget from staff.
correct.
So obviously, if we're going to add it, you know, it would, if we're going to do this, we'd have to add funds to the budget to do that.
Okay.
I have heard from some that they'd like to do it right away in the current fiscal year 2022. Well, that would take a budget amendment, regardless if we do it through the budget process or if we do a budget amendment. So I think reality is, putting in the budget or not, it's going to require a budget amendment if we're going to do it sooner rather than later. So where I'm trying to go is, I do not believe you need to put it in the budget this evening, because we're going to have to, if it's a priority, we're going to have to do a budget amendment at some point.
Okay, so we're going to delay it and defer it now. Okay, rec center, as advertised.
Yeah.
Um,
So I'm going to walk through some information. There's a couple different options, and I know the first option, I think the council at the last meeting said that's not an option, but staff do nothing is always an option. So one is, you know, we can keep the status quo. Clearly, we'd have HVAC, plumbing, and other issues we would face. Another option would be to scale back and rebid. We did have some discussions with RDG, and they did provide us some breakdowns. So the way the plans are drawn now, the locker room, wet classroom, corridor renovations, that's estimated to be $2.85 million. The HVAC for the existing gymnasium space is $5 million, and the raised track is $800,000. Now, the cautionary note about these estimates these are based on the schematic design phase, which was last May that they went through that. We know the cost came in higher than expected and came in 24% higher than the schematic design phase was. So these could be off, and you know, we could go out and rebid. We could have bid the locker room, for example, portion, and it may come in at 1.4 million, or excuse me, 2.4 million. It could have came in at 3.2 million. So don't look at these thinking these are what I would use for a budget at this point. These are just kind of some estimates that RDG provided us to kind of guide these discussions. You have other expenses, some we've expended, some we have not. And then, as we would with any project like this, we would include a contingency of 5%. And so if you kind of back into all these and look at what would the project cost with just, for example, the project without the gymnasium addition and raised walking track, that'd be a $4.2335 million project. Any questions so far? Other options that could be considered, we talked about this at the last meeting. You could proceed forward without the West Side Fitness Room, and then work to try to get some value engineering reductions. That is estimated to be $8.335 million, assuming we can achieve a 5% VE reduction. or you could proceed with the full project, which would be $8.9 million. Project funding that we've identified at this point is listed. The note I would make is on this list, this is what is in the fiscal year 2023 budget. When the council back in 2020, approved to move forward with this and set it up for the referendum, specifically with the lost referendum, motions the council took to allow a geo issuance of lost did authorize, the council authorized at that point up to $7.61 million for the project. So right now in the current funding in the budget's 5.6, council could go up to 7.6 or an additional $1.99 million. That is what is authorized. Not saying that's what you have to do. Funding source. There are ARPA funds that the council could designate towards the project. That's 1.4 million. And then to identify other sources that could be either delayed or just taken out of the budget. That would include possibility of outdoor aquatic slide. That is in fiscal year 2024. This project will extend into fiscal year 2024 if it does proceed forward. That'd be $425,000. You could also look at reallocating some trail dollars that are both in lost and hotel motel in fiscal year 2023 and 2024. That would gain you about another $500,000. So there is a variety of sources that could be used if the council would so choose to proceed with the project. That's the technical layout of this. I guess if there's any specific questions about this information, I'd be happy to answer any of those questions.
If we go with the extra amount, what does that change our debt levy rate to? Did we get that from Sue?
So, for example, are you talking about if
The
we
million that we're short?
So if you chose to use the local option sales tax dollars,
Yes. What would that change?
It would not change the debt service levy because you're using local option sales tax.
Wouldn't affect the levy.
Would not affect the levy, yes.
Oh, all right. But what would it, okay, my question would be, how much increase in payment per year would that be then off that?
We've not calculated that information at this point.
Okay.
How many years were we planning on it again?
20 years.
Well,
I thought it was
Okay.
19.
Well, 19.
so 1.3 divided by 19 plus interest. Right?
I'm gonna
Yeah,
try.
and it depends on what dollar number you pick too. Certainly,
The current structure based upon the 5.6 million was a 19-year issuance. However, further discussions with PFM, we can do a 20-year issuance, regardless of which dollar amount is decided upon for the local option sales tax debt.
But you don't know what that dollar amount is. We don't know what that would be.
The additional, I don't have it with me right now.
If you look at the lost graph, it shows the 25% tax relief that we take out of the lost revenues, which are projected to be 1.9 million, projected out for 4 more budget cycles. And then, so 25% of the 1.9 goes to debt relief. And as you look across at the rec center building debt payment, 22-23 starts out at just under 404, and then it goes off. The the following years, most of the time it's around 375,000. Is that right, Laura? I remember the debt, our principal and interest debt schedule in our budget book. We would be servicing debt at under 400,000 a year, which is about 20% of what we receive in lost revenue. And it does not affect our levy.
So you're asking about or talking about just the debt that we're calling the local option sales tax debt for the project?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Okay, so currently that is based upon an issuance of roughly 5.7 million.
Okay,
The annual debt service hovers around 378-ish thousand a year.
yeah, that's what's on the laws. Right, okay,
It's on
thanks.
page 36. So that's my question. If we did the million that we're short, what's that number going to change to?
So we did get some preliminary information from PFM that if we issued the 7.6 million, the debt service annual payment from that local option sales tax would be somewhere around 509,000. That's on the high end, 509,000 per year.
Yeah, we wouldn't issue that much. We wouldn't need that much.
Yeah, that was just one question we had for them.
I mean, that would be if we issued the total amount towards the project, which
Right.
would not be staff's recommendation.
So it would be less than that. How's that for an answer?
Well,
So we're between
That's what
the
I'm getting
two.
at is, if we do $500,000 on property tax relief and $500,000 on roads, so we got basically $900,000 left. And, we don't have anything earmarked for it. So, we could absorb a $425,000 payment,
Yes.
just so you guys understand where we're at with that.
Your local option sales tax page, this does include one of the issuing of the 5.7 million.
Right.
That includes this one.
Well, I called a friend of mine that's in engineering. He works for an engineering company that's in Iowa and multiple states. And in the last 6 months, everything that they sent out to their contractors was over budget. It's just the climate that's going on right now. And he says it's anywhere from 20% to he had one that's close to 50% over budget. And he didn't tell me how many, but it sounded like a fair number. Every one of those, I asked, how many of those people that was over budget said no more, or did it? He says the climate is what's going on. They thought this would still be the cheapest time, even over budget, to go ahead with their projects. And one of the things he brought up is the infrastructure bill that may happen at the federal level. If that goes through, then there's going to be a lot of money available for infrastructure. So these people that are, like baiting type people, they're going to have a lot of work coming at them. So he just told me that he just feels the dollar amount will not be reduced for quite a while. Not like I'm trying to persuade something. I'm just trying to give you the information that I dug out.
It won't get any cheaper.
No, that's.
Well, then if we wait to run for another election, which will be in September. So if let's say we just go ahead with this now, then they're going to start construction in another month, somewhere 2 months, maybe somewhere this year anyway. So if we wait, all right, you get a September, then you got to go out to bid again. So now you're looking at over a year from now that they can start it. So 5% extra is what it's been at the minimum. You're looking at $350,000, close to $400,000 more if you take it to a public vote.
Yeah, that's likely.
Not to mention, we've spent a lot of time on this plan. I mean, decades. And personally, I mean, I've spent a lot of time at the rec going through all this. I mean, a lot of meetings, a lot of people, a lot of conversations. And I mean, for me to not support it and listen to the people that have been calling me and saying, we need to move forward with this. This is not going to get cheaper. This is what sets us apart from other cities. This is why we vote you people here to vote, to vote for us, to choose for us where you are the best steward of our money. For me to sit and say that I think we should start over would be like saying that everything that I put into it was a failure. And I don't agree with that. I spent a lot of time on the project. We took things out, we changed things around, we talked with a lot of people, we tried to make a lot of people happy. We didn't get them all, obviously, because the pool is not included. But I think this is the best plan for us. And we talked about this in the last meeting and said that we're able to do both. Financially, we are able to do both. We've been putting money away for this reason. And if we don't do it, we're not going to set ourselves apart, and it's not going to be cheaper. You will be looking at doing it in the future, and it will cost you a lot more. So that's where I stand with it.
And Misty, do you remember all the different reconfigurations of space?
Oh yeah, lots.
And RDG tried to fit the most in to the space that was available now.
Mhm.
So, with the room, like the rental room, the party room, but then also we have swim teams and so on. So the space would be utilized, but get the most packed into that space that you already have. And they worked really hard. The pool thing wasn't a go, but I remember they went through 6, 7 different pool designs. And so I think it's a really good plan.
I agree. And sorry, was somebody else talking? Sorry, I thought I heard something. But I said in the last meeting too that I am a proponent for the VE reduction, and I am, but I don't want it to delay the project. I think if we can talk with Badings and we can figure out some things that can change, that's great. I guess I'm a little iffy on the West Side Fitness Room. I know it is highly used. I get it. But if that one piece has to go, that might be something we can work in later. But I also know that when you don't do that, when you don't include it in the project and you ask Badings to come back later or whoever to come back later, it's still more expensive because they have to reset up and it's just, the bid is bigger. So I'm a proponent of us getting it done. We've worked a long, hard time at it.
There is a pathway to keeping it whole without impacting the levy.
Yeah.
And I think from what I heard from so many people on calls and
Yep.
visits, that's what the public wants. Because they know with costs going up and inflation, Mike gave us that wonderful line graph on what's going on and the inflation impacting cities and personnel and so on. I think that not keeping it full would mean that we didn't get everything done that we have in the plan. At first I thought, well, let's not do let's drop the 245,000. But I've had people talk to me about that. They say it's just so packed in the leisure, classes. And for 245,000, we decided to do it later. It's not going to be palatable to go ahead and spend a whole lot more when, you think, well, we could have done it for a whole lot less. And it will get used. A few years ago when a wellness center was built, I think it was in Lone Tree, and they built this new wellness center with the racetrack. And I called them and asked how their memberships were. Did it seem, how are things going? And they said the memberships just skyrocketed. So I see this as maybe easing up the amount of money that we spend each year subsidizing the budget, that we want to generate more revenue. So, it eases up on our asking from them.
Chad, so people know, what's the number one thing that is requested for the rec center?
Walking area.
The extra million bothers me a little bit, so I would like to talk about maybe using some of the stimulus money. Not all of it, but some of it to reduce that. That's where I'd be. The West Edition, I wasn't really too in favor for it when we started all this, but I'd be willing to, one way or the other. That's not a deal breaker for me, but I'd like to go forward with it, but like to talk about using some stimulus money. That's where I'm at.
I think that question was raised, I think you had asked me about its possibility, and 3 days before that, I asked him if we could use it on Adams Street. So it's spent. No, I'm joking. But, we're talking about having to do some, private, public, upgrades there. And I had just asked Mike about it and, or the nutrient copper reduction project. And he said both of those uses would be appropriate, So, this came up a couple of days later, and I'm glad to know that it's at least an option, but then we're also, if that's being considered, then we're kind of back, to, this, dealing with this project too. So, it sounds as though, there's 3 proponents to do something. I think the other 3 haven't spoken yet, which I'd like them to have a chance to. They want to do something, The number one requested item was the raised running track. We all get that. The number one priority is HVAC. And I think just about everybody has an interest in HVAC, and what I've heard also with the locker rooms. At least that's just what I'm hearing. We've all received a ton of calls, texts, emails, grocery store visits, and so on and so forth about this. It's going to be extremely difficult. Well, it's going to be next to impossible to satisfy everybody, and we know that. This is why we ran for these offices. We knew that we would do these things and put our big pants on, and here we are. And there is, if you've had the proponents call, I'm sure you've also had the dissidents calls as well. And again, that's another thing that's difficult to measure. But I'd like to hear also what the others have to say this time.
You want to start, or
Anybody?
anybody else want to start? I'll start. I do know it needs attention. There's no doubt. Is it all in one big chunk? I don't know. If anybody does a house renovation, you don't go in and do it all at once. I'm not opposed. The HVAC, yeah, it's definitely an issue. Fix it. You know what? Can you do the raised track without doing anything else? If that's the number one thing? That's my question. Can you do that?
Well,
Or is that a
you
whole
go around-
nother
you go around
gymnasium?
2 gyms,
Right.
which is pretty small. I went and toured 3 facilities, and 2 gyms makes it pretty small.
Okay.
What I will say, it can be done, but then you're also taking it back to RDG and expanding. I mean, you're adding more to it just to add that raised running track, design phase, everything like that.
Well, I think Mark hinted at that on talking to them on the phone about maybe pro bono or minimum cost, which I wouldn't be opposed to. Has anybody looked at, obviously people want to walk around the track. Has anybody looked at putting nets around the courts so people can walk without getting dodgeballs? I've gotten several emails and it's 50-50 for the emails. As far as voice support from the community, it's probably 70-30 for no and 30% for yes, just depending on who's a rec member, which kind of falls in line with your 30% that was rec members. It's a lot of money. And number one, it's over budget. We set a budget, you get it, it's $1.3 million over budget. So I would be more for downsizing it. And that's just where I stand on it. HVAC, definitely important. So.
On the HVAC system, I recall, so there's 6 units upstairs and they're going to be replaced outside. But is there talk that there's only 4 of the 6 to be replaced? So we'd have the other 2 to be replaced sometime down the road.
It would be, yes. One of them is a theater unit. It doesn't get a lot of use, so it's less of an issue. But obviously, as it ages, it'll need to be replaced.
And then one of the prior meetings, there was the talk of possibly losing local option sales tax in the future. Legislative looked at that. That's been tabled for now, but in the future, is that something they're going to look at next year or the year down the road to where we would lose that money? And then we have a $500,000 debt payment to figure out where that's coming from.
I wouldn't be concerned about that. I mean, if you go back and look at even like the school taxes and how they've handled that, they know jurisdictions issue debt. There's a lot of communities around the state of Iowa that issue debt against local option sales tax. So I'm not overly concerned. Even if the legislature would eliminate local option sales tax in the future, my speculation, that's all I can do. I mean, speculating local option sales tax is going to go away is speculative too at best. But I would speculate they would follow past trends, knowing that communities like schools have debt against it, and so they set sunsets to allow those communities to pay off that debt. Now, you could also speculate to say they may hold communities that have debt whole while they let other communities that don't have debt eliminate it quicker for them. But I don't see them, and in fact, we know through legislation that is going through the legislature right now in the Senate comprehensive tax bill, local option sales tax is part of that. We seen an issue that was very specifically a concern for the city of Carroll in that legislation. We had contact with our local legislators. They got an amendment. That amendment passed Thursday that cured that issue. And so I have actually relayed and really sent thanks to both Craig and Jason Schwartz, who did some legwork and got that changed. And like Craig said in an email today, or excuse me, Jason said in an email today, their intention on the state side is to make cities and continue local option sales taxing and have cities be whole.
Yeah, didn't he say they fixed that little problem?
Yep, they did. They fixed the issue.
And he said that Craig really led the charge and most likely no problem as it moves forward.
Anything else, Kyle?
No, I don't have anything right now.
JJ?
I guess I kind of said what I wanted to say the other night. There's obvious needs that have to be addressed there. I agree with Tom that the HVAC, the locker rooms are probably priority and have to be taken care of. Being that far over budget, I just can't figure out how to say yes to it.
Okay, so you really would not be in favor of it at this point, at least
Not the full.
not the full. What would you be in favor of?
I would downsize. Like I said, I would be willing to downsize, do the HVAC and do the renovation of the locker rooms for sure.
Well, here's where we're at. If we don't reach a consensus or at least a 4-2, the measure's going to die. And I don't think that there's anybody here that wants that to happen. And so, unless there would be a fourth council person that is in favor of at least a large portion of this, then, and then if we couldn't, if there couldn't be a conversion to a scaled down version, and again, we're back to that the measure would fail. So as your mayor, I'm supposed to find consensus among you 6. And it's challenging, but I'm hearing 3 for sures, and let's work out the numbers is what I'm hearing. And I've heard 2 scaled down versions. And
Yeah, I think.
anybody
it would
heard
be
different?
So unfortunate to miss this opportunity, because it will never get done down the road because of inflation and yes, it's over budget, but that's going on everywhere. It's not an anomaly that happened here. And,
Well, that even happened at the jail,
oh my gosh, much more. Bating's bid was 15% over what is going on, the basic number. And considering what we're facing, and you looked at Mike's line graph, and the Iowa DOT has construction of roads now up to, it's increased 40%. And so, and to be real honest, this is a rec center project to add amenities to an almost 50-year-old building. You fix the HVAC, you fix the locker rooms with a little new tile. That's not a rec center project. That's just maintenance and repair.
Deferred maintenance.
And
repair.
deferred, and that's not what people want. I don't see that as a project, and I really do believe that this will be something that will be a magnet for people. And there are things going on in much smaller towns than us and much larger towns than us. And us just to sit still, it's not only doing the rec center project, it will have a negative effect on what Carroll is able to do in the future. Because people don't want to move or work in towns where there's nothing to do. And it is an asset. It's in the Grand Park athletic area. That whole area is a magnet for people. When you think about the culture, the sports, indoor and outdoor, people now are, to do this whole project just barely gets us caught up with what other people have been doing. And you've heard of the sports plexes, the rec plexes. Now they're building giant turf indoor. Susanna is building a huge indoor giant turf facility. Kids sports are huge right now. And it's a booming business, not only for nonprofits, but for for-profits. My grandkids in Omaha go to facilities that I can't even believe. And the rec center brings people. We just went ahead and approved $28,000 to promote tourism. And all these basketball teams that are coming on the 19th and 20th, that's bringing people from all over. And I want a rec center for this town, and it's really for the region, that we can be proud of and make it a magnet for people to come and enjoy themselves, but also to come and check out Carroll. I don't know, I think, are there people here that may want to weigh in, that we could give them a chance?
Yeah, I was about to do that, but no.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
yeah,
You're tired
yeah.
of hearing
And
that.
no, not at all. And
No, I-
those are
I
points
just-
well
I've been
made
sitting
and
here a
well
while.
stated and earlier debated, and I just wanted to give you an opportunity to finish. And as a council, we're not either, but let's go ahead and open it up. Is there any comments from those in attendance? Don't all raise your hands at once. Go ahead. And just approach here and just for us, state your name and
All right, my name
residence.
is Joe Vesterfeld. How you guys doing? I just want to start off by saying thank you for your services. I mean, dealing with the public is no easy task. I know that. I work in retail. I've seen a lot of you before. I just want to say, you know, I hear what everybody's saying. If there's a way that we can make this happen and make it all happen, we owe it to our kids. We owe it to ourselves to be able to make this happen. I've been in Carroll now for 22 years. When I first got here, you know, I've heard about how progressive Carroll is. It seems to me in the last couple of years, we've kind of been in a little bit of a funk. We did the library, and that was excellent. A lot of the families that go there, I've even heard them say, it's an excellent facility. So if we can have an excellent library, why can't we have an excellent rec center? There's no reason why we shouldn't invest in our future. If we want our kids to come here and stay and to grow their family, we need to give them a reason to. Right now, I mean, there's really not a lot for families to do. Why do we live here in Carroll? Because it's safe? Yeah. We got good school district? Yeah. What else can we offer them? We could offer them an awesome rec center that accommodates everybody from the young to the old. I just think it's in our best interest. I think if you guys actually sit there and think, it's actually going to pay off in the long run. If we have it available, if there's a way to make it work the way that it needs to be done, I think we should do it. And I think you guys are kind of missed the boat. I've already heard some people say it's going to get more expensive. We know this. Nothing ever gets cheaper. The price always goes up. Somebody's got to make more money somewhere. If we have a chance to lock it in, do it all right now, don't miss the boat. I think we need to do it. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Step right on up.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Jean Guy, and I'm recently retired. And since I've retired, I kind of made one of my goals, especially the last couple of weeks, but I've been working on it since last year of March, but going to CrossFit, and then I've added on, when I finish CrossFit, I go to the rec center and try to get my walking in. And I've also, like many of the other people that are my age and a little bit younger, I bought a pickleball paddle last week. And, you know, since I'd been going to the recs or CrossFit since March last year, I really hadn't been going much to the rec center. Or if I did, it was to water walk, but it got cold. So then I decided, well, I don't want to go and get cold, you know. So this last 2 weeks especially, I've been walking starting about 6:30 when I get done with my CrossFit. And I am amazed. I don't know, do you guys ever go there to see what's going on in the morning? Who has gone there in the morning to see? I am totally amazed. When I get there about 6:30, the first couple gals are coming in and they're setting up the pickleball on the other side. And they get 2 courts generally. I guess sometimes when the snowboards are back, they get the 3 courts going. But then they start playing that, and I'm just walking around the thing. And then when the pickleball thing comes down and they start playing, then we kind of do the half circle. You know what I mean? The half circle. And it's busy in there. There's a lot of people walking. There's the pickleball people. And then last week we added basketball people in the other court. So here I am, you know, we're walking, trying to avoid everybody, but it's crowded down there. And I've been talking to a lot of people and they are really using this place. I guess, you know, I can be there from like 6:30 to 8. Sometimes I go to church a couple times and then I don't get there till after CrossFit, till closer to 7:30, 8. And then it's just so busy. I can't believe it. And so that was one thing. I think senior citizens are using this place a lot. They're doing the water walking, they're playing pickleball, they're walking. And when a lot of times there's not room for everybody to pickleball, so then those guys take turns and they walk. So that's one thing. The other thing I'm hearing from a lot of people my age is they want their kids to come back and live in Carroll. And they want a reason for them to come back and live in Carroll. And they said, I could give you names if you want to ask me afterwards who I'm talking to. But it's people, they said, we want our kids to come back and live here. And they said rec center, a good rec center is one of the things that, and has them come back. And also if they don't have their kids live here, when their grandkids come, they want to have them be able to go to the rec center. So anyway, those were my 2 points, but everybody I know, of course, in my little crowd of a lot of senior citizens, they're all like 100%, keep going. We remember, we were alive in the 70s. I was in the very first musical that was ever put on, My Fair Lady, done by Sister Charlene. Father Schott was in it, by the way. Father Lefevre at the time, he played the main character and Bart Gifford and stuff. But I was there. I remember when they built it. I remember going to meetings before they built it when they were talking about it. And I agree. Carroll was progressive. They were like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. Let's do it. And so what happened? Why are we now like, well, I don't know, maybe it'll get cheaper. I don't know. Anyway, please vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Anyone else? Jeffrey.
I would just echo, I'm
You need to
Jeff
introduce yourself.
Taylor, in case you didn't know.
Right.
I would echo what Gene and Joe both said. I sat up here for 30 years at these meetings, and almost from the get-go, there was discussion about, I'm going to call it the chicken and the egg, the housing market and the employment market, which comes first. The employers can't come if there's no employees, the employees won't come if there's no housing, and so forth. But each and every time that they did come to the community, what you would hear people say, there's usually newspaper articles, I came here because it's safe, I came here because it's clean, and so forth. And back when I started in 1981, they talked about the new rec center, which was about 4 or 5 years old at the time. I agree with the comments that people made here tonight. Obviously, money's money. I don't like paying taxes any more than anybody else does. But I travel around the state on a regular basis and I do hiring, which I'll mention that here in a minute. But when police chiefs and fire chiefs and such are trying to make decisions about making these moves with their families, they're looking at the communities as a whole. And they're obviously looking at the things that Joe hit on with the schools and the shopping and the availability of medical services and things like that. But more and more and more, they're looking at what is it for our family? And the rec center is the biggest magnet that we have. I've always called it the biggest indoor park around. For years, some council people would talk about how much money the rec center loses. The police department loses $2 million a year, if that's the way you want to look at it. But that's not what we're doing. As a city, we're providing a service. And the rec center, we're not losing money there. We're providing a service to the citizens of the community. We're providing it because they want it. I contend that if we make these improvements, it adds to the attraction of our city. That when businesses are looking at moving out, I keep reading in the paper about hiring business people or consultants to come in and help us figure out how to get businesses to come here. And we talk about getting developers here to build houses and things like that. And it's all part of the puzzle. Rachel talked about the puzzle with the library thing earlier. This is the same thing. You can do one thing or another, but if you don't do everything, the puzzle isn't complete. Now, granted, I know there are people out there that oppose things, but as somebody that was in city government for 34 years, I can tell you that the people that are upset or negative about something are a lot more vocal than the people who are in favor or like the way that things are. You guys having been on the council, know that. I get out and about and talk to a lot of people, and I've heard a few people say, "Holy cow, it's $1.2 million over," and I read the comments on Facebook, and I shake my head sometimes too at how wrong they are. But I can tell you there is a lot of support for this idea in the community. There just is. Will you take some flack if you vote for it? Sure you will. But as Misty said earlier, or maybe Mark said it, I don't know, you got elected to represent the public. This is a representative democracy, and you're here to represent the community as a whole, the best interests of the community as a whole. And I contend that community as a whole is a puzzle, like Rachel said, that, you've got housing, you've got jobs, you've got all of these things that need to come together. Is $1.2 million extra a lot of money? Absolutely. But I think it's a definite investment. We talked earlier about streetscape, and the time that I was here, I'd hate to even guess. I'm sure we spent at least $10 million on it. And it looks nice. It does. I contend that if you polled the public and said, would you rather spend $1.5 million on the next phase of streetscape, or would you rather spend the extra $1.2 million? And it's not just because it's less money, they would vote for the rec center every time. Because it's hard to quantify the value that I, as a person in Carroll, get from whether the streetscape looks nice and the lighting is pretty and all that. But I can tell you, a lot of people go to the rec center. As Gene mentioned, there's a lot of times when you go down there and it's difficult. Walking around that track at night, you get beaten up with basketballs and volleyballs and pickleballs in the morning, which are a little softer and slower. But again, I'm just me, one person and one taxpayer, but I talk to a lot of people, and I think this is a good investment in our community.
Thank you, Jeff.
Jeff, I want to say one thing here, that you brought up property tax. This thing is only 10% property tax, 90% local option sales tax.
Sure. And, and it's money's money. I guess is what I'm saying, that I recognize it's a lot of money, as does everyone else. But, it's like we were talking earlier. Changing the HVAC is something we have to do, period. Whether we've got the money or not, it's something that has to be done. And maintenance has to be done. This is a thing that it's a gamble, but like I said, I think it's an attraction to our community, just like our golf courses and our parks are, and things like that, and the safety and cleanliness and so forth.
It's an investment.
Anyone else? Hi, Kimberly.
That's okay. Good evening. I don't know if I can say
Kimberly
it.
Tiefenthaler. You can say your name. Just say your name. We know you.
Kimberly Tiefenthaler.
Yes, thank you.
I don't know if I can really say it much better than Mr. Kaler did, but we do need the amenities that this proposal does offer for our community. It is a draw, and I would encourage you to think about the future of taking Carroll forward and keep moving Carroll forward, not only for all of us, but for our children and for our grandchildren. And this is a large investment, but it's well worth it. And out of respect for those who've done the homework and spent the time doing that type of homework, it's definitely something to think about. When you think about rural Iowa communities, the ones that are going to be sticking out as we go forward in the future are the ones who remain progressive and who think outside the box and who push themselves. And that's not comfortable. But the fact is, in rural development, that's where we're at. How do we set ourselves apart? That's such a key thing for all of us to think about, no matter who we are and what we do as we live and work in Carroll County. So really making sure that we do stick out, so that when that person who wants to work at Pella comes to town and they tour the city and they see a progressive rec center, a community center that has been well thought out and well planned out, and people being involved in that place, whether it be a prospect for Pella, for the hospital, for a new business downtown, no matter who it is. It's vital for our children for our senior citizens. And I just urge you to really think about this as for the future and rural development in this area. So thank you.
Thank you too, Kimberly. How about our participants online? Is there anybody that's raised a question there or would like to speak?
This is, oh, excuse me.
Go ahead,
Go
Mary.
right ahead, Mary.
This is Mary, and Barry is with me also. I agree. I don't know if we can add any more to what has been said in support. But I also say, you know, Misty is right. You do have to make these decisions. That's why you were elected. And I also know how much thought and preparation has gone into the plan you have. And to me, if the city can afford it, it's what we need to do.
This is Barry. I've watched that corridor of Grant Road and Graham Park change over the last 50 years, and it has been amazing to me. That area of our city, I think, is our largest attraction, our largest economic attraction. It draws thousands and thousands and thousands of people from the park to the fields. And what's interesting, why does the State Boys Athletic Association want to come back to Carroll? Because of the field, because the facilities, because of the town, and because of the people that are here. Working the state baseball tournament this summer, as we would stand and greet and say goodbye to fans as they left the stadium after a game, even after they lost, they thanked us. They said we loved it. There were communities that had to travel hours to get here and were kind of mad. Once they were here, they loved it. So this area, this Graham Park, Grant Road corridor has to have the best. And I think this investment in the rec center is not just a bill you have to pay. It's a quality of life and an economic attraction bill or project. And every dollar that we spend on that is an investment. Thank you. I just think it's a great, great project in a great, great area in a great town. Thanks.
Thank you too. Any other comments? Anybody else want to approach the council? Anybody online? Okay. In the essence of time, as you noticed on tonight's agenda, there is no resolution scheduled for this. It cannot be added at this time. The resolution would be to move forward and approve the bids. But in this remaining amount of time, I think that it's important that we discuss once more what our options are. I mean, you've all made your points and we know what our options would be, but we still need to find a consensus to know what we're going to be prepared for a week from today. And that is, you know, whether or not it's going to be the acceptance of the proposal or if we decide on whatever a plan B would look like. And the plan B has ranged everywhere from doing just HVAC and locker rooms, of which I think there's just at least right now 2 supporters of that, whereas there's been 3 for doing the whole project and then disseminating how we're going to pay for it and whether or not it's, you know, we do any kind of 5% or reduce the west end. So I'd open it up for that.
Mike, on the stimulus money, you want me to come up with a number or do you have a number you would like to maybe talk about what we could use?
I mean, that would be a council directive. Do you want to pull my computer up? So this is a little different because this is numbers that RDG gave us today. So we shouldn't use it because it's bad. It depends on again, you have to give us direction of what option you want. Making an assumption, which you should never make assumptions. I would guess if there's any path forward, my guess would be this would be the one I'm hearing. So you're talking about $708,500 that we'd have to find.
Where did this number come from? I thought 7.8 or 9 was the bid.
Yeah, so these are there's some survey expenses, FF&E, design expenses. There's some miscellaneous, and then you have your construction contingency. So that's how those numbers. Now we did have an alternate in the plan was to do some renovations to the west side fitness room. So this one that I'm showing is assuming we're not going to do that. So
what's the short 708,000?
Well, that's the gap that we'd have to find funding.
I thought we only had 6.7 or something like
that. We have total funding is 7.6 million.
Okay, gotcha.
So that's where that comes in.
Okay, I'm thinking that blew engineering, I guess.
Yeah, no, very good questions.
Okay, thanks.
So again, here's a list of options that you could choose from. And again, they range from use additional loss bonding capability, use the ARPA stimulus dollars, either say we're not going to do any changes at the outdoor aquatics slide. Again, that project is not because we have to replace something, but again, it was looking at trying to add a new interesting feature down there to try to attract additional attendance. So there could be a decision on not doing that. And then there's trail dollars that certainly could be reallocated to this project that are not encumbered on any current trail project. So there's a range. Even just through, again, you have a $708,000 gap. You could take the slide in 1 year of trails and for the most part have that gap filled. So if you're asking me options, there's a lot of different options. The ARPA funds, like I've always said, since it was first announced, I think the council should be very deliberate on how those dollars are spent. They're really a unique one-time opportunity for the city to make changes. And I know when ARPA funds first came out, I always encourage the council to wait, think through how we expend those dollars. And that's why we've not up to this date encumbered those. We have, really 4 more years till we have to expend those dollars. So those are all within discretion right now.
And the project definitely qualifies.
The way the rules changed, yes, it would qualify now. And the rule change was because originally you had to go through this really convoluted process on determining if you had a loss, and then because of COVID-19, we had a financial loss.
Right.
Well, they changed that to say you can declare up to $10 million of financial loss. Well, we only have $1.4 million. Then once you declare that financial loss, you can use it for any general governmental purpose.
Okay.
This would qualify.
Okay.
Unlike the original COVID, which you can only use it for
Infrastructure.
well, very specific infrastructure.
Right.
You couldn't even use
Right.
it. The word streets
Right.
was exempt.
Right.
I'm ready to throw out something my feelings are.
Go ahead.
Is
Please.
2 different things, but one is, the aquatic slide and the trails, we can delay those. We've got stuff now going on. We've got good trail systems now. So if you delay that, you're at 675,000. So you're real close to the 708. So I would go with the project with that, taking those items and delaying them, a year or 2 or whatever council at that point says. And then that west entrance, I would say that would be, if you wanted that, that would be stimulus money. If you didn't want to use the stimulus money, then don't do it. But that would be my proposal.
So you want to use for the 245 stimulus?
Yes.
Which would probably be a small amount. of
It's
that.
1.4 million.
Verna is thinking the same thing. The slide, I know it's needed, but I think we can find a path to that.
Well, I think people would,
Yeah.
my feelings is doing the rec center now the public would like that more than the slide right now. And the slide can come at a later date. It's
Well,
not like we're not going to do it.
Yeah, it's year round, the slide, seasonal. I think we would be smart to divert the full 500,000 in loss for the and hotel motel to this project. So we don't burden people. We don't have, I
Where you getting the
think your
five?
plan is good, the 425, the 5, it's a
Where are you getting
17,925.
five?
I read it wrong.
I was just doing the year
The
23 and
trails.
20, the lost in the
I'm
hotel
saying
for
all of
just 23.
I'm saying.
You're doing
using all
both?
3, 4, 5, yeah. We have a good trail system started. I think it's worth deferring that to create.
So you're at 500,000.
A first-class facility. I think it would be smart.
So you can do it all without stimulus money if you do the 4 sections of the lost in the hotel, right? Is that what you're saying? That's what I got out of it.
I'd like for us to do the full thing.
Don't do the aquatic slide.
Right.
And don't do the 500,000 that you got highlighted right now. Delay it.
Yeah, you're still 413,000 short.
That's 925.
No.
Based on it proceeding with the full
Full
project.
project, unless we.
But if you're assuming you can do value engineering, you probably could get to that number.
Right.
I don't have the number in front of me. I don't have the report. What was the west side?
240.
245.
Right.
I thought we were short 708,000.
That's without the west.
That's
side
without the
fitness
west side.
Okay,
and
so
your
if you do 425 and 500, you're there.
Yes.
And then you can use stimulus money
You're
for the West Addition if you want.
you're assuming we do value engineering. You're probably 30,000 short at that point.
Yeah. So whatever we're use stimulus money to do the project. I guess we got to start somewhere, and that's my proposal.
One more time, would you please? Sorry, but I was writing while you were talking and looking, and so you're saying remove any expenditure for a slide next year.
Yeah, delay that to
Would
however
divert
many
4 and a
years we want
quarter
to,
towards
and then
this.
pull your screen up, Mike, farther.
Sorry, Laverne,
The
but
other way.
I'm
So this highlighted area, that's 500,000, right?
Yep.
So what's that total of? 400, that's 925,000. Okay,
300, 500.
so isn't that over 708? So,
Yeah, it's
so you could do all of it.
it's 925,000. If you add the 425, you're 953.5 short. So like I said, you're 27.5 short.
Yeah.
28.5.
And whatever shortage you are, you just use, out of 1.4 million, you use 30,000 stimulus money. And so the property tax part of this will not change.
Right, but yeah, and it pretty much never was.
Right.
I mean, it was all local option sales tax.
Right.
Right.
And we have room on that by a long ways to add on that extra.
And I want to clarify, just so there's no confusion. The plan was to always issue 700,000 in local geodebt, which
Right.
is property taxes, just so that there's no confusion.
So we're basically increasing our payment. How much on the debt, on the lost debt dollars?
Well, you would, under your scenario, you just said you wouldn't increase any.
It wouldn't.
It would go in the loss collection bucket, not
Yeah.
the loss debt bucket. So you're increasing it 925,000, what you just ran off, and then you would be again short that 28.5.
Right. Okay. Obviously, we have to start somewhere, so that's my plan, and that's why there's 6 of us.
Laverne, is that without the west,
No, that would be with the West.
with the west?
Yeah.
But still value engineering.
Mhm.
Sorry if I'm slow on the uptake. Well, once again, we don't have a resolution before us today, so there is no vote. But what I'm driving at is that we reach some type of congruency tonight, or as long as it takes, before Monday. Because that is when the rubber's gonna meet the road. And, there's been good comments made all night. Certainly nothing I can necessarily argue with. Please understand maybe didn't have anybody come forward tonight, but there's been a lot of opposition to this as well. Probably a pretty good reason for certainly 4 new seats up here that there's been some discussion about. The one thing that still sticks, in my head that I just can't seem to get over is how, if this comes in over $1.3 million over budget, nobody's fault. It's just the way things are. I get all that. But would we be doing this at home, in our businesses, at our churches, at our other organizations? Would we do it? If it was 15% over what we planned for a washer and dryer or a car.
Not the same, no.
I know.
You can't ask that. That's not apples to apples.
Well,
That's
but
not fair.
but we're talking other people's money, Misty.
But it's what they're paying is what they've always paying. The levy's not changing. So that and grant and in this world is not going to get any cheaper.
I get it.
And so I have not heard that many people, and look at all the graphs that we've talked about. We are not at the top of our peers. We are at the bottom. We are doing great for our community. I don't like these prices either. And that's why I said, I want to value engineer it. I'll go talk to Nick Bading and find out what we can change, to get some price down on some of it. We were all taken back by the price that came out of it, but we can do the project, we can do the road, we can do everything that's in this budget. We've set ourselves up for this appropriately. That's what we've been doing for the last 6 years since I've been here. And I plan to continue to do it for at least 2 more. And I pride myself in the great steward that I have been. I haven't voted for things that I didn't think weren't worthwhile. And if I didn't think this wasn't worthwhile for myself, my family, my children, the people that I know that use the facility and use it daily, I wouldn't have got on the group and I wouldn't have been part of it and I wouldn't have believed in it and I wouldn't be where I am today. I don't like the price either. I don't. But sometimes you do have to vote for something, like Jeff said, that is As a whole, it benefits the entire city. Yes, you will not make everybody happy. You won't. I found that out. You know that too. But we can bring the price down on this. I believe that we definitely can. I think we can talk to them about some things, but I think the project has to go forward. And we can still do all this. And we're not causing any more increase to people. I like the fact that you're trying to cut some things, but I don't think this is what we cut. I just don't. If we want to cut something else, go back to that list. Let's talk about that. I don't know, but this doesn't affect them.
Well, I guess the big picture is, you know, we all have identified the same problems. We need housing. We need people to fill jobs. People are increasing their wages to keep people, but we need more people. And I just see this as an investment for 1.3 million over. If factor that into another 45 years, Laverne divide 1.3 by 45, 50 years. If we do nothing, we're gonna have a 100-year-old building that looks pathetic. And if we do nothing, we are going to be surpassed by we are already being surpassed by other communities, much smaller than ours. That turf place thing they're building in Sioux Center, they've estimated they're going to have, I read an article, over 200,000 people participate in that facility as soon as it's, built. Every year they anticipate having activities and sports events and so on. That these kids are wanting to practice year round. I've never seen anything like it. And they want indoor facilities, and they're looking at, I don't know, we're so sports focused, but that's the world we live in. And I just see if we keep it as it is, it's just going to be a dump. And that's not who Carroll is.
Yeah, nobody wants that either.
Well, then I will throw out this question. I see it as critical to economic development. I know Kimberly alluded to that. Then if we're going to grow Carroll and make it happen and attract people to any new housing, we stimulate what the three that aren't interested in this project. What is your vision then? And what is your specific plan for growing Carroll and moving forward with Carroll? Carroll's moving forward. Then what is your prescription for leading us forward and making and keeping Carroll the wonderful town it is? If we lose just let one of our signature facilities just become stagnant, then tell me, and I'll be on board, what is it you want to do so that Carroll stays stellar and is a hub for medical, education, sports, you name it. I want to hear what your plan is. If not this, what?
Well, Carolyn, you made a good point. You said Sioux Center's got the indoor thing. Why aren't we refocusing on something indoors versus redoing the rec center? Now, one of the things I hear is it just comes across like we don't even have a rec center. We have a rec center, but it needs refurbishing.
Well, it needs the deferred maintenance, you're right, Tom.
Correct, and it's been deferred for a long time.
You're right too, we need more to do indoors, and we need that extra gym because we hold events. It's crowded. Go down there on a Sunday, it's packed.
Yeah.
And then we need the gym, so we have a 1/10 mile raised running track, walking track.
Now, I heard somebody say, I think at the last meeting, that they were starting to walk at Kemper Fieldhouse.
Yeah, and they walk out it because they don't want to get hit with the balls and walk around.
Has anybody collaborated with Kemper saying, hey, how about this? Maybe you can use our softball field if we can use your walking track. Has anybody thrown that out there?
People are doing that because they want to avoid,
Sure.
what's going on down there. They will immediately come to, if we have a walking track, people will go there. They'd much rather be on a walking track at the rec center.
Okay.
So, yeah, they really do, Tom. And they look at it as temporary. They're waiting for us to move on this.
So to back up a step two, prior to us coming into council, we bought new treadmills. How many were there?
There's 9.
9?
9 total treadmills, yeah. We bought 4 new ones.
4 new ones. So those are full all the time, I'm assuming, to not walk on, or?
Today they were.
Yeah.
They're full all the time.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty busy.
So I think it's just a big chunk to bite off. And then I see us scrambling here right now saying, well, if we do this and we take this and we get this and we do that, and we'll be okay then. And then what happens if something comes up? And you're talking about drawing to the community. And that's great if we draw to the community and get new businesses here, but where are they going to live? This is just the chicken and the egg thing. I
I
mean,
want to know what do you guys envision as the right,
I would rather invest in part of the housing part of it.
We have to do both.
we have got,
We
they are
have to
going
do
to come
both.
to the houses.
I don't know if you can do both.
I'm gonna
Okay.
jump in and say something too. I mean, we just found $708,000. So is there $708,000 out there for housing that we need housing? Because we hear it all the time that we've got $100,000 jobs in town, but there's no house for these people living, so they don't take it.
Yeah. Is there-
That's my holdback.
Yeah.
I mean,
I-
regardless.
The city isn't going to pay for housing, though. The city is going to pay, the cities just don't pay for housing. That's why we put money in the budget to talk to somebody to try to help us figure out how to do that. But we can't just throw $700,000 at houses. That's for our builders
So-
and our.
It hasn't worked very well though, is my point. So
We've run out of people.
I can have the nicest rec center, and I want to move here because of that, but I don't have a house to buy. That's the problem that I have, is later on down the road, where's the money and what are we going to do? Granted, we have a $56,000 study for that.
It's not a study. It's money that's put aside. It's not a study. They're two different things. That's money that's put into the budget to say, I want to go talk to somebody who knows more about this than I do, so that you can help me figure out what the plan is, so that we know how we can bring these builders in and how we can figure out how to get these areas built for contractors to come in, whether it's local contractors or it's people from outside of town. But it's not a study. I wouldn't take it as a study at all.
We have the study.
The study's
but we
done,
need-
and we've studied the study for so many years. I mean, it's
Study.
really, and that's really the only reason why I said we have to keep going with this. We have to do both. We know that, like, we're out of contractors in town. The ones that are here are booked solid. It's 3 years. There was a realtor just sitting here a little bit ago who I talked to last week. He had a person come into town. He wanted special custom, talked to a contractor, 3 years. He said, goodbye. He went elsewhere. And then he had another person come in that wanted a home. I mean, our builders are busy. All of our builders are busy. I know people that are going to go back into the building process to try to help what's going on, but it won't be enough. We have to figure out, we have to do both.
And we can do both.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, and I think it was last February, Mike, when you had you invited the bankers and realtors and so on. And I remember Janelle Lenz in particular bringing up the fact that there just aren't enough laborers to build. They would build, but there weren't enough people, contractors, subcontractors, around to get the housing started around here. And speaking of $100,000 jobs, these people that came and wanted housing, they wanted like $400,000 or $500,000 houses. And contractors don't speculate and build a $400,000 to $500,000 house. So Yeah, we need a strategy for that, but we can do that. But all the pieces, as Kimberly said, all of the pieces have to fit together. We need to be working on housing. We need to work on bringing business people and throw in the rec center project, that whole area into the mix. We need it all. That's why I asked, what are we missing? What is your guys' strategy? Maybe we need some new, yeah, go ahead, Jay.
No, I guess you're asking for our strategy and you're telling us that the housing can be strategized, and well, why are we not there yet then? If this has been, if housing has been an issue for so long in Carroll, then how come that there isn't a strategy put into place?
We've offered incentives, and there just aren't enough construction people. And as Misty said, they're busy.
Right.
They're
So
busy,
I guess that's what I'm saying. Like, we have to have housing. Putting all this money into this rec center is not going to make the housing happen. I mean, it's not going to make the contractors any less busy. It's not going to make any of those things happen.
Well, then how do we then do housing if there are no contractors or subcontractors, the plumbers, the electricians, and those people? So, I mean, and I've heard from realtors that jobs bring people. And we have empty jobs, but they're going elsewhere where there are things to do.
I also think the real difficult thing here is that you guys, the few of you here that are new, you're looking at 1 year's budget, and I get it. I was in your shoes 6 years ago. I understand. It's a lot of numbers. It's a lot of new information, but I've been here long enough now to know that you can't just look at 1 year's budget. Mark, you were in it for a long time too. You have to look 10, 20 years down the road. So this is just a piece of what we continually are working on from the beginning to, it's just a piece. We have to figure out how to move forward, and we're going to continue to just roll this ball down the road for the next however many years we're all here together working on this.
Jean, you had another comment?
Well, I'm really confused because it seems to me we're talking about two different things of money. And would the money that we're, if we didn't do this rec center thing, would that money be available for the housing thing? It seemed to me it's like some kind of loan that you buy stuff on and it's going to go. It's not like you're going to pay a lot of money every year. I mean, you know what I mean? Like right now, people are buying homes in Carroll, $400,000, $500,000, $1 million. And I realize a lot of people aren't spending that much, but to me, it's not even that big of money when you put it out over, 20 years? Is it longer than 20?
No. 20 years.
I mean, I get it that the housing is important, but is that the same pool of money? I mean, like local option tax, can that go toward housing?
Any legal
It can go
purpose.
toward
Mhm.
anything?
Mhm.
Well, I'm still confused, but I still think that because this goes out over 20 years, it's just kind of to me, it's kind of a no-brainer, but I get it. And housing is important, and I totally understand that, and builders are important. But I think that this other pool of money is available for this project, and then, get this thing out of the way and then turn everybody's focus on the housing. I mean, obviously that's really important, but I can't see why you can't do both.
I would argue too that it's not the city's place to provide housing. It's the city's place to provide an environment that's conducive to the private market, doing development, building houses, constructing houses, and so forth. It's not the city's job. You think your constituents are upset because you maybe will spend an extra 1.2 or 1.3. See how upset they get when you start buying houses for people.
Right, yeah.
It's not- I mean, it's
We're
just-
not in the business, we're not in the housing
I
business.
think we're polluting the issue.
Yeah.
I think we need to focus on
Yeah.
Do we want to do this rec center or don't we want to do it? Or if we are,
Right.
in what
Yeah.
format are we going to do it?
Yeah. I think to Kyle's point,
I wasn't getting on the city should buy houses for people. I'm just saying, I mean, really, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 houses going up a year, typically Deer Creek area, that new subdivision, Steffes by the Farner Bakken. I mean, if we want to grow that number of 3 and 4 isn't going to work. I think we all know that.
But what's the city going to do besides tax abatements to, I mean, even when you did the tax abatements, it didn't make any difference. You didn't have any more houses.
I personally think the first 75,000 or first 100% of the 75,000 is complicated. I mean, I get that all the time. People ask, I can spend 75,000 in my house, but my value went up 40,000 or went up 30,000. I mean, I just think, stupid simple. I mean, back to that saying.
That's a confusing tax abatement property that they put out there. It really was confusing. It's not, you're gonna get tax abatement if you build a house for 5 or 10 years. It's well, you get some, but there's stipulations. So that one was, I don't know. I personally wasn't a fan of it.
We're kind of migrating off course
Yeah.
a little bit. We're shifting over to a housing discussion.
Yeah.
I understand why you brought the question up. If we've got 700 here, then why can't we invest that? I get that, but we're not going to spend much more time talking about housing.
Mark, I think the real
We need to
bottom
make a
line is,
decision on this rec center.
yeah, it's either do nothing, scale back and rebid, or proceed forward.
Yeah, and we've got 3 proponents for a plan, and then it sounds as though there's at least 2, maybe 3 that are for a more basic plan. And this is your decision, and we need to find a way to come together on this. And frankly, I'm not helping much. And I'm a little disappointed in myself, but.
So where's the obstacle here is, okay, we got to do the locker rooms. Everybody's agreeing on that. I take that.
Yep.
Okay. So then the next thing is the number one thing people want is elevated walking track, 800,000. But the stumbling block is to do the elevated walking track is you got to build that gym.
Right.
So you got 2 things everybody wants, but to get to all of them, you got to do all 3.
Sometimes that happens.
And the space is needed, that third gym.
Well, we can almost guarantee that if you want to think about going back and changing the project, the timing and the amount that we'll have to pay to redo and come back to rebid, the dollar won't come in as great as what you're seeing right here, even though I know you don't like it.
Mr. Mayor, does a consensus have to be reached tonight?
No.
If there's going to be a vote on Monday on the budget, wouldn't it be prudent to allow this next 7 days for people to contact council people for or against to get a better feel for the temperature in the room?
Which they have been for the last week and a half.
Sure, but now that it's reaching the fever point, maybe the people, like I talked about people being kind of complacent and say, I hope they do it, but they don't say anything. Maybe now that they're realizing they may have a voice, maybe they won't too. My history as the naysayers will definitely jump up and scream. The people who are in favor of or maybe on the fence are going to have whatever. We'll see what happens. But maybe some of those people that are on the fence will take this time after reading about this discussion in the newspaper, hearing about it on the radio. Maybe they would, sway somebody that's on the nay side, or maybe somebody on the other side. Who knows?
Yeah, you summarized it pretty well. I mean, there's no resolution on tonight's agenda, so we're not voting on it tonight, but we still need to get the budget wrapped up primarily, because we're going to on Monday set the maximum levy.
Correct.
And that's the budget issue.
We're still 60,000 away from that.
Yeah, and I know where the 60 is, but but you don't need me to reiterate that. But
by the way, that 60,000 you were talking about, I was going to mention it earlier, I forgot. I think the last time a comprehensive study has been done on all of that was 1994.
compensation study?
Not just compensation, but the stratification of the positions. It was in the spring of 1994. And one of the things that we talked about on the compensation board for the county was the assumption always is that when you give those 3% raises, that you're giving it on a number that's accurate. And what we found back in 94 and what I see as I travel around the state is people are leaving jobs because their salaries or their positions are not keeping pace. So even though 60,000 is a big number, it might cost you 100,000 if you don't do it, because you either lose people or you're not having the ability to attract people because your salaries are too low. Or you do like we did with some of the superintendents at the water and wastewater. We don't raise the salary for the guy who's been there for 30 years, and we pay the new guy who starts on day one more than the 30-year superintendent. It makes no sense whatsoever.
Understood.
You know, we don't stay competitive. We only become competitive when we have to. And the 60,000 isn't just for union negotiations. It's to stay competitive. It's to make sure that your people, you know, is this position worth as much as this one, or should it be this way? And is this salary comparable with other cities our size? You know, it's not as simple as you guys tried to make it sound earlier.
Understood. So back to the rec and back to finish your question is, you know, what I was striving for was to have some kind of decision pretty well made before it becomes official a week from now, because right now it's a stalemate.
I mean, I just want to point out too, like I keep hearing about this housing situation, but in some of the jobs, the retails and stuff like that, they are not finding people. So where are these people that are knocking down these doors saying, we want houses built? Why are we going to gamble ourselves on them in the future that may or may not come and not invest in the people that are here right now? That would be my major question to you guys. I mean, I want somebody that's going to invest in me and my family to keep me here.
Right.
And if what it takes to keep families here, to keep our Walmarts, our Hy-Vees, not even these high-paying jobs that people are paying $400,000 for a home, because I know I can't. So why would I worry about them? Why are you worried about them? Why are you not concerned about the families that we have here? And if something that is like the rec center will help keep young families here, then I would think you have an obligation to make it happen, because we're here. We live here. We're here now.
It's a good point, Joe.
You've got to keep them.
Well received.
Catch us now before they leave.
Right.
Because we do have a young population that is ready to go.
Right.
And when that happens, what's going to happen to Carroll? So let's not think so much about that future, these guys that want these big old houses out there and the new developments. And let's think about some of us average, everyday people that want to be here.
And Joe, I'm going to touch on that just a minute. I agree with you. But there's another side that maybe you don't look at too, is down the road, we're going to be asked to take care of Adams Street and look for money for that. And then maybe eventually be asked to assess them, meaning I'm going to fix your road, but I hate to tell you this, you're going to have to pay anywhere between $5,000 and $50,000 to get it fixed. Or excuse me, 1,200 to, what was the quote? 1,200 to 12,000 to get it fixed. And no matter what, you have to pay for it.
It's the high end, it's 18,000
Well,
for mine.
Just saying. So there's other stuff in play that we think about too up here. Is there's long-term commitments to this city. It just doesn't involve the rec center. It involves people that live on Adams Street, and you know we have to take care of their streets, and there's got to be money allotted for them. If we do these projects and go through, and all of a sudden we've used all this money, and Mike says, "Well, really need that money because we can't afford to do the whole street at once. Let's assess." Well, then we're put in a bind. Because now I got to tell people on Adams Street, well, you're gonna have to pay more, even though you don't want to. Let's figure it out over a 10-year plan. Does
But
that
it
make
also
sense?
sounds like, and what they've been saying is that there is an avenue to make this happen.
I
They
hear
still
that too.
have-
There's
they
always
still
an
have
avenue.
Money left over.
Right.
Our Cole Adams was in the budget. Plus the other road. Both projects are in the budget.
One or the other.
I know, but we're only doing one or the other, but both
Correct.
are in the budget.
Correct.
And
So-
Adams is
Right.
not, there's no assessment in the budget.
Exactly.
for Adams.
Right.
So
Right.
we are doing it. I mean, it's, the money's there.
And we already talked about
Yes.
this. We can do both.
Right.
It isn't an either or. That's a false dichotomy.
Right.
We've done multiple projects in a year for the many years we've been on. We can do both. Mike said that, didn't you, the
Yeah,
last
at the
time?
last meeting.
So.
Adams Street right now is a 2.5 million obligation bond. Anybody can correct me if that's not right.
As
So
much
there's
as
another thing we gotta pay
4.2.
for.
No.
I mean, there's a number of funding sources for the project.
An obligation bond.
I don't think very understand that they're
Or
being burned right now. You might want to kill
I
their
was wondering
feet,
what I was hearing.
or there's
It should come from you.
Before there's what?
I didn't want to finish that sentence.
I don't want to get into some street argument.
No.
Point is, it's not free. We're gonna be paying for it, and we might be paying extra for it. So that's my,
And that was my point to Joe, was there's a lot of stuff out there that we have to think about too in the future, not just simply the rec center.
Right.
So we're just, as new members, we're trying to keep it all, to me, we're trying to keep it real.
And what, Joe, you didn't get to hear the other night was, you know, the people that are saying, okay, we've got, you know, $6 million to build a library. We got $5 million to do a street building. Now we're talking $9 million for a rec center. We don't have $4 million to do a street. That's the dichotomy. You know, that's what we hear so much of. And, you know, the council hasn't made that decision yet either. And I'm not going to get into the weeds on Adams Street. We got to make a decision on this rec center. But to your point, while it's well taken, remember the other side of this, what are you going to do for us here? Let's not worry about who's coming or how to attract other people, because, you know, there's fine residents that live up and down Adams Street too, that have been advised that there is a potential to do additional assessments. Okay? Rock on.
And I think Rich Hartley tried to unmute, or did you have any comments?
I do not. I hit that button by mistake.
So he doesn't have anything. Okay. Okay. Well, we're back where we started, I'm afraid. You know, to Jeff's point earlier, you know, we're not making any decision tonight. So we've got 7 days to let this simmer, but I do believe we're kicking the can down the road. And what I'm fearful of is no action if it remains that way. And again, none of us want that. And
And the one thing I will just say, so everyone understands in the public and the council, a resolution like this gets presented, it's a financial resolution. You know, so a 3-3 vote is a failed vote.
Right.
And so a failed vote would mean the project would not move forward, or that, at least that resolution would not move forward.
well, what more can I do? I'm at a bit of a loss. I really am. I've made my personal feelings known on it, but again, I don't get a chance to vote. I want to see something happen at the rec center. Mike used the word palatable, and we spent a lot of time talking about it and really haven't gained anything. So in the essence of not being here until midnight. Unless somebody has anything else to add, we are currently at a point of impasse. And unless something changes until Monday, as Mike stated, the measure will fail.
One comment I would just add, as you guys think forward, I know there was a couple comments made about, well, maybe there's something else we change in the scope, or what if we consider this? And the one will be, and I'm not suggesting this is a route you go under, I'm trying to flush stuff out a little bit, is, well, what if we just do a raised walking track with the current 2-gym configuration? If those are options you really want to look at, I think we should have some conversations with RDG to try to understand kind of what is the potential cost implications to something like that. That definitely will trigger a design cost. I know RDG's, back up for a second, RDG has indicated, and I know it was requested, would they consider a lesser fee? And in their comment back is the fee is kind of what the fee is. It's the cost that they have to pay to a lot of their sub-consultants that are doing like the structural work and the electrical engineering on it and the mechanical engineering on it. So it's not just even RDG dollars that would go into it. And so if there's other design considerations, we probably should have some conversations with RDG to kind of understand what those implications could look like. We all know architects are very expensive. And the more we make drastic changes, there could be some cost implications. So something to think about. If there's something you really want us to have conversations with RDG, I would just contact me in the next couple of days so we can have those conversations.
So you're looking at bringing this up at Monday's council meeting?
It'll be on Mondays.
It's going to be on Monday's
That
agenda.
would be within the 30 days that we have.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
And in fact, you can do both the 14th and the 28th. They both will be within the 30-day window.
Okay.
So we
But
always
that's-
kind
but
of.
that's not getting your budget where you need it.
Well, by the 28th, we'll know. I mean, the one thing is, so back up and let's talk about the budget process from here going forward. We'll prepare based on some additional discussions this evening. Staff will prepare the maximum levy resolution that will set the public hearing for the 28th. At the 28th, you'll hold the public hearing on the max levy, set the max levy, and then we'll ask you to also then, after that maximum levy has been set, to set a public hearing on the budget for the first meeting in March. So there, based on the 28th, if things change, and even if it gets pushed out to the 28th, certainly there's some time to amend the budget. Certainly you can leave it in there and not expend the dollars. There's those options. But we also need to start thinking about pre-levy resolutions for debt issuances. So we're gonna have to set those on the 28th too. So I mean, we really do need to, while even the 28th, we can take actions. We really do need on the 14th make a decision on how we're going to proceed forward on the rec center if we're going to look at doing a project with the bids we have. Certainly if we look at doing a project without the bids, we have a little bit more time. But we need to make decisions. Can we circle back to the budget changes?
Sure.
Right now I have two budget changes on here. One is we'll remove the comp plan update. The other one is we'll remove the cemetery mower. Holding that we wanted some additional discussion on was the classification and compensation study. So that would be one area of discussion. The other thing that I would throw out there for council discussion, this is our local option sales tax collections. We do have some dollars that are showing over as a carryover balance for the end of fiscal year 2023. One option would be to take some of those dollars and fund other items within the budget. They could be items like the housing implementation. I think that would be a logical one out of there. Another one could be taking, you would reallocate some dollars that have been previously earmarked out of general fund for the irrigation, and you could then earmark them into local option sales tax. That would be another, and I think that would fit well within the scope of the local option sales tax. We do capital improvement projects. So, I mean, just in further discussion of if the council has a certain dollar amount, there's some additional flexibility the council could look at.
Thoughts, anyone? Thanks for those suggestions, but we still need to decide on essentially 2 items, right? Classification, the comp study, classification and compensation study.
Leave on or take off?
Pardon?
Leave on or take off?
That's my question is.
My only thing is if it's going to be, if it's going to be used for next year, wouldn't it make more sense to have it done next year to be used in the fall?
Well, I mean, if this is funded, we will start that basically when the fiscal year starts. So we'll work to get RFPs out, and then we'll start that in July, and then it would be completed in the fall time so that we're ready for both going into union negotiations and as our budget preparation begins.
And I raised the question just only, is it necessary? Again, when, you can study a lot of that stuff on your own rather than have to pay for it, but is it a wise investment?
And this is primarily for the union contract.
No.
This is just all around across the board.
It's both.
It's both.
Represented and non-represented.
And I would argue we do have some areas in our employment group that we're just, there's gaps that are just, again, we've hired different people we haven't been able to recruit, so then we jack a wage up, and it's caused some disparity that's problematic in some cases. Now, some of those may be there, and some of them I defend. When you have a particular position that requires a certain licensure and the market there is no individuals with that licensure, sometimes you're just going to pay what you have to pay to get that position filled. And that's just the market. But there are some things I think we need to look at. So I mean, certainly I would not have put it in there if I was not recommending it. I think it is, I think ultimately it is, how do we retain and recruit our employees, and how do we value our employees?
And that came from our strategic planning.
This one did.
That one did not.
Keep it in, leave it out. I need some direction here.
We keep it in and do it. Is it good for how long?
I mean, if it's done right, it is a 5-10 year realistically. The market changes. You heard tonight, I wasn't aware it was in the 90s last time we did one. So they're not done frequently. There's reasons why they're not done frequently. I think just from a what it takes resource wise, staff wise. I mean, this is not just saying here we're going to hire a consultant. There's going to take a lot of work that we're going to have to put into it as city staff also.
If it's something we only do every once in a while, then leave it in, I guess.
Brad, can I ask, how often would you guys use something like this when getting ready for negotiations?
I don't know, I've never had one, so we only had one negotiation, and I fully expect this next one will be a short contract. So,
Short term, you mean?
very,
Okay.
just too many unknowns, I think, on the city's part and on the officer's part, so 2 years, I'll be surprised if it's that long.
Okay.
So if it's something that gets kicked for a year, that may be okay, because the contract may be short anyway, but I may be wrong, they could come with a 5-year contract and it's great, but with inflation and cost of living, I don't see that happening.
And I think that's kind of where I'm at, like with everything changing, the cost of living, inflation, et cetera, are we going to get a good read right now, or is it better to wait a year and do it?
My opinion is, I think we're so far out of line in some areas that I think we need that change. I concur with Brad that this will be an interesting negotiation period going into. I'm hopeful though we will get a longer term contract than just a year or two. And what I will tell you is talking with like Mike Galloway, they are still getting multi-year contracts out there even this year of 3 or 4 years. And I know you and I have chatted, this has been great having a long-term contract. And so I think there's a lot of reasons why getting longer term agreements, it's just better for morale long-term. Going into that union negotiation year after year, it's tough. There is a 6-month period where employees don't like management don't like employees don't like employees. And there's just a lot of dynamics that go on there, and it causes a period of lost productivity, lost trust, and almost to the point of if we win, in negotiations, the employee group has to present their side, their request first. Then the next meeting, the employer presents their side. And I would tell you, in my belief, even if we said, we agree with everything and we're going to give you more money than what you asked for, they probably still would be upset at that point. It's just the nature of negotiations. They're not, and I think, I would hope that we don't go into it planning to have a 1-year contract. I think we deserve a relationship with our employees that's better than that.
I don't know. My opinion is maybe let it sit for a year and do it once things maybe have stabilized a little bit more.
You're saying leave it out.
Mm-hmm.
And Tom, did you say you want?
I'm on the fence. I'm not really sure. I've seen a lot of the stuff that's been thrown in front of us as far as the studies and as far as who we compare each other to and everything else. I don't know. I could flip a coin on it, to be honest with you, on who we're compared to or who gets paid what from what county, what city. In all honesty, I'd leave it out. But if it's something necessary that has to happen every, what did you say, 1994? Every 20 years, if we're due for it, then we're due for it. So.
Any other thoughts?
Anybody else
Need to
chime
draw
in?
this to a close.
Well, I will tell you, this is an area of the field that I'm not real professional at, but I have to depend on him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mike in his memo says 40 of the city's 65, I didn't know this, full-time employees are covered by one of the 2 collective bargaining groups. So I think knowing that 2/3 are represented by unions, that it might be smart for us. 40 of 65 of full-time employees are in the unions.
Okay. See, I just think the opposite of that.
Yeah.
Because that's going to be a negotiated, 40 of the 65 is going to be negotiated, hopefully successfully. And if not, then it goes to arbitration, whether there's a compensation study in there or not.
I will have to say, the new people, we've had really good negotiations and nothing, I have never run across anything unreasonable. It seems like the people that are in both are reasonable
Mhm.
and they understand the city and they understand, what we're grappling with.
Right.
But, yeah, I think we do need more than a one-year contract.
Oh, yeah,
I wish we could get up to 3 just for budgeting
sure.
and just knowing what we're dealing with.
Right.
And it also, then they know what's going to happen with their lives. I think
Right.
that's important too.
Right. Yeah, my earlier point is that this wouldn't impact whether we get 1, 3, or 5-year deal, whether we do the study or not, whether we spend $60,000 to do the study. It doesn't,
But this would affect the levy.
it doesn't, oh, well,
Right.
yeah, because it's out of the general fund.
Right.
Sure.
So,
If Mark wants to get to his goal, if we want this and Mark wants to get to his goal, he's got to do a little homework what else do you want,
Yeah, I mean, to your point too, I trust this guy. I've only worked with him for 45 days, and I trust his gut. But I've also he and I have, the debate rages on, Mike. And he challenges me, and
That's what
I'm
we're here for.
Yeah, and I challenge him, and I'm trying to find a way to lower that tax burden, and I always will. I'm not going to change my spots. Leave it in, take it out.
Mike mentioned in my notes, he said it could run between 30 to 60,000, that the 60 was the high end.
Yeah.
If we haven't done this since 94, that Jeff Kaler mentioned, maybe it's time. So we have a grasp when we go to, run ads if we need new employees or whatever, so that we have a grasp on reality. I think it would be a smart thing to do.
I think if we know we have disparities,
Yeah.
we probably
yeah.
should be doing
We
it.
had a terrible time
And
getting
hope that it
the
comes in low.
wastewater person. We had to hire a headhunter. At the grade, what was it, grade 4?
Yeah.
Which is why Jeff said sometimes those costs
Yeah.
are gonna outweigh
Yeah.
having this
Yes.
done. I mean, cross your fingers that maybe it comes in
I don't
low.
know, I just think it would make for better decision making.
And I get that, and this isn't a yeah but thing, but I'm just saying this is going on globally. It's not a city issue. It's not a governmental issue. It's private. It's everywhere. Kyle can't get a detailer. I mean,
I would say if we're in more stable times, I would be for it. Just not knowing what the future holds. I mean, things change, from month to month, and so do wages. I mean, I think we've seen that, with grocery stores and fast food chains, what they've advertised over the last year or two for wages. What's it going to be in a year from now? I'd rather have ammunition to go forward for the next 10 years versus something that is changing.
Well, it is
That
going
will-
to change.
That will give us our ammunition. We'll have it.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm doing it on the private side. I mean,
Yeah, but I'm just saying a year ago till now, things are way different even.
last year I was doing these things already with my workplace. I mean, I had 3 to 5 compensation analysis done, and I'm doing 3 more right now, just across the Midwest to try to find additional people to bring in and get them at that price because I can't find them.
Is this a one-time compensation study and then it's done, or can you spread this over multiple years?
No, and maybe back up and talk a little bit about it again. So there's really kind of 2 parts to the study. The first part is a classification. So you go through basically all your job descriptions and you try to get a system where you're putting like positions on the same kind of step scale. That part, honestly, once you get through that stays pretty stable. Once in a while, you have to move people from steps, but that becomes really abnormal. The second part is once you have those relationships established, then you go out and really understand what's the pay, what's the competitiveness of it. Now, certainly there can be some variances in those, but that becomes rather easy to update as you move forward, because then you can do some peer review again. But the heavy work is, again, trying to get those relationships set up, not so much the pay matters, but it's just a component of it. And what I will tell you is I've done one of these when I was up at Swift County. It's a process. And I even remember after I did that, I said, never do that again. And here I am suggesting that we need to do one. And again, I believe for us to go out there and really be competitive and understand what's going to allow us to retain and attract employees, I believe it's something we need to do. But certainly I understand the constraints that the city's facing. So again, I don't know if that answered your question, but I don't. I think even as you go through, and even if you see a big wage change, I don't believe that invalidates the entirety of it. I think it's just you're going to have to go back and if you're working your plan correctly, you're going to make those changes, and then you're going to be able to maintain that over the long term.
I think we need to understand the context in which we're operating and find out where we're sitting right now and be prepared for things and changes in the future. So we aren't, positioning ourselves not to be able to hire the most qualified and so on. And we're losing good candidates to other towns. So I would hope we could get something closer to, under 60,000. Maybe we will, since you're doing RFQs, RFPs.
Yeah, but 60,000 is what we have to decide on now, though.
Well, and we're just budgeting for it.
Yeah.
We still got to approve the RFP, and so.
So where I'm at with this is, like I said, I have to trust him on this issue because I'm not that educated in this thing. So we're $60,000 off from what Mark has been wanting. So either we find $60,000 somewhere else and keep this on, or Mark, you get 90,000 of your 151,
Yeah, and we don't, we kind of deferred the media request.
Right.
We couldn't
Well, we threw that to
couldn't
loss.
throw that back on.
Yeah. So, can we, basically, I guess, do we just table this until Monday night and
No,
we got to do this tonight?
Or we're coming back Wednesday.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've already had that discussion at last meeting.
Yeah, and that's off the table for me. So we're going to approve the media request and just have Lost pay for it?
No, we're just going to talk about it at a different time.
Okay, that's kind of what I thought. So, okay.
And we're talking like if we do a trial thing for 3 months, that's $12,000.
Yeah, let's don't go down that road. Let's get this down here.
Yeah.
I know, I'm fought for the classification. It hasn't been done in a long time.
I say leave it on.
I would say if there's ability
it's-
to maintain it so that as things inflate, you would be able to adjust that, keep it semi-accurate and up to date
If
all
it's
the
a
time,
city
right?
tool that's a 20-year deal, let's just do it and use it and utilize it and be done with it. So we
Okay.
know where pay scales are and go according to.
Okay. That wraps it up. I've got so much writing on this sheet, I can't tell where I started. But
Well, I want to go back to, I still think one of the things that's on the table, if the council wants to hit is looking for a certain levy dollar, which is not unheard of. There's directions at times we get of saying we want to hit this number. There are dollars in local option sales tax.
That's what I was just going to say.
So we could reallocate some of the golf course irrigation from general fund to Lost for that.
Then you get your 151.
So, you would take your loss number from 150,000 this year to 236. Now that would reduce the 286.
Where you get your 206?
Hello. Hello, Mr. Computer.
Are you suggesting to reallocate from the general fund to the tax?
86.
86,000, that's what your suggestion?
I thought we were off 60. We were only off 60.
No, we're off like 90. weren't we?
Well,
No, we have 90, we have 90 taken off already.
No,
And
we
you
have,
got,
65.
where'd I get?
oh, what am I doing then? Okay. Yeah, so, yeah, so.
Oh,
yeah,
because
we're
it's a,
100
I
so
considered it TIF.
151,000.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
I used that TIF 25.
We had 65, so.
Yes, all right.
We have 86,000 we need. So what I'm suggesting is take 86 out of lost, right? That's what I said, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that would leave. That would leave $181,409 in lost balance at the end of fiscal year 23.
That gets you to 151.
To get to the 151, yes.
Okay.
So
Grab one, sure.
Whatever. I'm willing to work with that.
So that gets us to the 151. That gets, so in the end, our total tax asking, this is across all funds, correct? Yes, so total tax asking across all funds would be 6.3 million. That's a change. It would be increasing our tax asking by 80.68%. I'm about ready to go to sleep, I think. Our levy rate would be 11.85. That compares to
Last year.
11.65 last year, so it's up 20 cents. Residential taxpayers would see a decrease of $2.52% to their tax bill, city only.
Right.
So if everyone increases, it could be even.
Right.
And then the commercial property taxpayer would see a decrease or an increase of 1.78%. So the question is that acceptable? And then if it is, we'll present. We'll prepare the max levy resolution. We're planning to take this out of employee benefit levy. Is that correct? So that's where the reduction would be is the employee benefit levy, if you're looking at the different pots in there.
Yeah, because the 810 is going to be the 810, and then you got your debt service, and that is what it is. And yeah, I get it. You guys kind of understand that too? Ben? Okay. All right. Anything else?
We got there.
Okay. Yeah, we got there. All right. Well, we are about out of gas, aren't we? Looking for a motion to adjourn. Moved. Is there a second?
You bet.
Okay.
Tom?
Yes.
Misty? Yes. JJ? Yes. Laverne?
Yes.
Kyle?
Yep.
Cameron? We are adjourned.